we ready to go?
We are ready to go. We are live.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Education meeting. We previously saluted the flag in the executive session. So with that, if Mr. McLaughlin, you could do a roll call, please.
Ms. Beckman? Ms. Beckman? Okay. Ms. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Salmon?
Here.
Mrs. White?
Here.
Mrs. McCune?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mrs. Korn?
Here.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Markarian?
Here.
Mr. Syatt?
Here.
Ms. Fox? Madam President?
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Bernards Township. Notice of the time and place of this meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and to the Township Clerk, and a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board on the Board of Education offices in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Due to the public health emergency in the state of New Jersey, as declared in Executive Order 103, the board will be suspending its normal meeting procedures this evening and conducting this virtual meeting. Directions for accessing the virtual public meeting were posted on the district website, www.bernardsboe.com. The same directions were posted at our intended but unavailable meeting place. We very much welcome input from the public. Because of this virtual meeting, public comment will be handled as follows. Email to btconnect@bernardsboe.com or text to 908-292-3047. Use public comment as the email subject or the start of the text message. Indicate your first and last name and address. This is required for your public comment to be recorded. Please keep your comments to a maximum of approximately 3 minutes if read aloud. Individuals are permitted a maximum of 1 public comment during public comment on agenda items. Individuals are also permitted a maximum of 1 public comment during the public comment on non-agenda items. The Board of Education reserves the right to limit the length of time allotted for public comment for both agenda items and non-agenda items. In the event that time limitations prohibit the reading of a public comment received pursuant to these instructions, the comment will be published as part of the meeting minutes. For no public comments will be accepted prior to 7 p.m. or after item 18 on the agenda this evening. With that, I think we were going to briefly touch on a plan for public comment. Any board members have a recommendation as to the length of public comment for each session?
I think maybe 45 minutes for the first public comment, and for the second one maybe would be good.
Other thought? Okay, thumbs up, thumbs up. I see some thumbs up. Okay. So with that, to the public, we invite you to send your public comment as directed in my message a moment ago. Public comment will be read as it is received. Ms. Fox is kindly doing that for us this evening, and it will be read into the record. At 45 minutes, we will stop and then hopefully have an opportunity to address many of those questions or comments. And then we'll continue with the agenda, and there'll be another opportunity at public comment on non-agenda items for the same. Anything else from any of the board members? Okay, with that said, our next item is the board presentation. I'm not sure who to introduce. Is it Mr. Markarian first?
Yes, we're
Okay.
we're coordinating the sharing of screen. So I think Ms. Fox is going to share screen here. Actually, if you want, Ms. Fox, I can do it. It might be a little bit easier. Let me see if I can manage that. All right. Could I have a thumbs up if you're seeing a presentation screen? Great. Thank you. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. It seems as though we had a better start from a technical perspective this time around, which is wonderful. We're really excited this evening to be here and have the opportunity to share with you what we are looking to implement for a return to school for Berners Township school students in September. Tonight, I'll be speaking along with our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Fox, our Director of School Counseling, Ms. Smith, our Director of Special Services, Ms. O'Connell, and three of our principals are joining us this evening as well, Dr. Lazovic for Ridge High School, Ms. Hudak for Williametta Middle School, and Ms. Hosany for Mount Prospect School. So we really look forward to sharing our thoughts with you tonight, and we thank you for being with us. So we were charged back in June, we received a guidance document from the New Jersey Department of Education, Commissioner of Education, as well as the Governor's Office to reopen schools in some capacity for students in the fall. And we want to do that in a safe manner, obviously with the condition that we remain in stage 2 on the governor's scale, as well as the ongoing pandemic. Safety is the utmost priority right now. So I'd ask you to keep that in mind as we talk tonight, and keep that in mind as we consider the elements of these plans, with the understanding that that's really been at the outset. Of course, when we work with students, keeping safety at the top of our thought process is always something that we're doing. And right behind it is instruction. We want to provide students a safe environment and the best instruction that we can. We're in some very unique circumstances. I think we all understand that. So I wanted to review a little bit some of the safety first measures that we are looking to achieve in our plan. Certainly, this is not a comprehensive list of safety measures. However, it's representative of some of the more key items that we have been focusing on. And these items are really at the heart of some of the schedule ideas for the different buildings and for the virtual programming that you're going to see this evening. We are striving for social distancing. I think we are all very familiar with the fact that that's what we've been doing as a state, as a nation, to try to have more space between one another. The goal is to strive for 6 feet. However, we know that that's not going to be possible in all of our classrooms, even if we reduce our numbers of students, unless, as we talk about later, there's perhaps a surprising number of students that might not report to school. That could change. But based on what we've seen in preliminary surveys of the community, we have about 80% of parents indicating that they want to return to school and 20% indicating that they don't. And with that 80%, we recognize that there are going to be situations where maintaining a perfect 6 feet of distance between everyone in the buildings isn't going to be possible. So we are requiring masks for all staff and students to help mitigate that shortfall. We're also going to be cohorting students to try to manage the cross traffic and interaction between different students. We also want to try to minimize the amount of time that students are in the hall, minimize the amount of time that students might be in large group types of settings. So keep that in mind as you look at the cohorting that we have planned on some of these future slides. In addition to face masks, we are looking at where it may be appropriate to use barriers and/or face shields. We want to arrange our buildings, the furniture in the buildings, in ways that promote social distancing. Clearly, cleaning and disinfecting is a big job. It needs to happen as often as possible, and in order to do that, it becomes a shared responsibility. Our custodial team alone can't do that. We're going to have to work together to keep our rooms and shared surfaces as clean and as disinfected as possible. We need to practice good hand hygiene. That means teaching all of our staff and students about the proper way to wash hands and sanitize hands, and making it as convenient and safe to do so as possible, with ongoing efforts to install more and more equipment to facilitate that in the form of touchless dispensers of hand sanitizer, touchless dispensers of soap in bathrooms, touchless faucets, and touchless paper towel dispensers. Those are ongoing efforts continuing throughout the summer. We also want to make sure that folks come to school as staff members or as students healthy. In order to require that to happen, we're going to have everyone screen themselves daily, meaning that prior to reporting to the school buildings, prior to getting in the car to come to work, prior to getting into the car or onto a school bus, we want to have everyone do a quick health screening, including taking a temperature, before heading off to school. And we will facilitate a way to do that electronically to make that as painless a process as possible. Of course, air quality is very important. We want to make sure that all of our HVAC systems are working properly, filters are being changed appropriately, ventilation systems and fans are all working, and wherever possible, we're bringing in appropriate amounts of fresh air, which may simply involve opening windows when it's appropriate. We need to work with our health professionals. We need to work with our health department, the New Jersey Department of Health, and the local Berners Township Health Department, and our school nurses. We have a wonderful coordinator of school nursing. She's actually here tonight, Ms. Zarabera. And we have amazing school nurses. We really need to trust them to help us through this process. Clearly, we want to avoid sharing, minimize the amount of times that there are common surfaces being touched. And a lot of this relies on policy and procedure that the board has been working through with me this summer in response to the requirements of the road back plan, where various policies are outlined as required in a return to school program. These policies are still being drafted, but the first draft is finished. Some of the things that we're talking about tonight, such as mandated daily health screening, are in those draft policies and procedures. This presentation has that draft policy and procedure linked to it by hyperlink, so that all of our community members can at least get a look at understanding those draft documents as we try to complete them throughout the summer. When this presentation is posted, you'll be able to use those links if you're interested in looking at those documents. Part of our safety approach is to simply start slowly. Phase 0, as I'm calling it here, was when we were not able to be in school at all. Our facilities were closed to staff and students full time. We had a full closure. Everyone is very familiar with what we went through this past spring. Let's hope we don't have to go back to phase 0. Where we want to start in September is bringing students back to school in some capacity. That has been our charge. We have been given those marching orders. And I cannot thank the people in this community and the administrative staff and the teaching staff that have all been contributing to trying to figure out what is a way of making that happen. How do we get students starting to come back to school? The number of survey responses, the number of parents who have contributed their thoughts, either through council meetings, through the Bernards Township Communication Council meetings, through PTO leadership meetings, PEC leadership meetings, has been outstanding. The staff have been amazing, contributing countless hours on a volunteer basis over the summer to help to contribute to try to solve what seems to be an impossible problem. The administrative team, it's humbling to try to lead them at this time when I can call them at 7 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night and they're answering the phone, willing to try to work through solutions to come up with a plan to start to bring students back to school. I'm humbled and I thank all of them as well as our community members. We want to start simply. We want to get students back in school. That is going to be a Herculean task, and I just hope that we have the opportunity to do it. It means that we're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that we might normally like to do in this first phase. Before and after care programs are not realistic. Option 2 at the high school is not realistic. Starting out clubs right off the bat in September, having students getting together for lunches, those are not realistic for us to start school with. It doesn't mean that we don't want to get there. It doesn't mean that we might not get there soon, God willing, if things go well. It just means that we cannot start there. We need to cohort our students into groups to reduce the volume of students. That work in managing those cohorts, moving them around buildings, checking them in each day, and getting students home on a daily basis is going to take more management and, frankly, administrivia than we've ever had to manage before. Some of the other things are simply going to have to wait. When can those things start to come back? When can we move from some of these more restrictive schedules to something where we can begin to move to an even more open and normal type of operation? It's very difficult to say. We just don't know. All of you following the governor's stages know that we have been moving in various steps, even through stage 2, and sometimes taking steps back. Moving from phase 1 to phase 2 in our school plan, I anticipate we'll have a similar type of program, looking at each item that we try to move into a less restrictive mode slowly and carefully. Bringing back programs like before and after care, or allowing students to get together for club meetings indoors, things like that we will want to do as soon as we feel that we can safely do them. Those would be things happening in phase 2. Of course, from an instructional perspective, having more of our students come back to school, having longer and full school days, are going to be things that we want to work toward as soon as we can safely do that. Ultimately, we want to get to phase 3, where everyone is back in school in what will not be normal October 2020, but some type of new normal. I should have said October of 2019, right? Last October. Going into next October, things are uncertain. But of course, our goal is to get to a place where we're all back in school doing our normal operations as soon as that's possible. Safety in and of itself takes on a lot of forms. It's not just about students' physical safety. It's not just about their physical health. It's also about their social and emotional health and their mental health. And that goes for all of us, not just our students, our families, and our staff as well are included. Tonight, our Director of School Counseling, Ms. Stephanie Smith, has joined us to share a little bit about this topic. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Markarian, and good evening. As Mr. Markarian noted, a priority for our district is the emotional wellness and the mental health of our students, staff, and our school community. These are challenging times, and we do acknowledge the toll that the pandemic has taken on all of us. And to that end, we are preparing for the impact on mental health from the pandemic in a variety of ways, including this summer, plans for September, and beyond. So this summer, we have several summer projects occurring related to exactly that, the social and emotional learning in the classroom, as well as specific mental health professional development opportunities. Our teaching staff is participating in a summer staff college course called Building a Community of Learners to address the community building and relationship building aspects of establishing a classroom culture. Additionally, counseling staff are both providing and participating in summer opportunities on trauma-informed practices, adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, grief-sensitive practices, and the impacts of COVID-19 on trauma and overall mental health. We are focusing our plans on supports, as Mr. Markarian noted, for students, staff, and our families, including resources for our community. We believe that the emotional wellness is essential in re-engaging students, staff, and all adults, and supporting our adults for readiness to be able to engage children in academic learning. We are collaborating with various partner organizations and community organizations for further professional development opportunities. And our work is really planned in a tiered system of supports to include universal supports for students, individual and group counseling, and community counseling support as well. To that end, we have established a district social and emotional wellness task force, and this group is specifically focusing our plans on SEL and wellness throughout the school year. The task force is representative of staff from each building, cross-disciplinary staff, and administrators from all levels. And so we're developing our plans for our staff in service, the opening few weeks of school, and continued social and emotional and mental health supports throughout the school year. Our work is being strategically aligned with the CASEL's 4 critical practices for return, CASEL being the Collaborative for Social and Emotional Academic Learning, so our professional organization that really gives us a lot of guidance in this area. Those 4 critical practices for return include taking time to cultivate and deepen relationships, building partnerships, designing opportunities where adults and children can connect and heal and build their capacity for learning, creating safe and supportive learning environments, and continuously using data and meeting regularly to have an opportunity to improve and continue these supports throughout the year. So it's a snapshot of our work that is ongoing and continuous at all times, but particularly during times of mental health stressors such as a pandemic. This is important work that will continue throughout the summer and with thoughtful planning around the well-being of our staff so that they can support the social and emotional well-being and learning needs of our children. We acknowledge and prepare for the potential trauma that staff and students have faced during COVID-19, and we're keeping the mental health of our staff and children at the forefront of our work as we plan for an unprecedented opening to our school year.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Fox.
Hello, everyone. Before I jump into our plans to return to school, I want to start by reviewing the terminology that we'll be using. So at a global level, our overall plan for the return to school is what we would call a hybrid instructional plan. This is because we're offering two ways for students to receive instruction. There is a blended learning model, which we'll explain in a minute, and there is a 100% virtual model. In the blended learning model, students will receive some instruction in person at school and some instruction remotely while at home. In the 100% virtual model, the students will not come to school and they will receive all of their instruction remotely. In the beginning of July, we surveyed parents, and our goal was to find out what your thinking was. What your thinking was with regard to sending your children into school in the fall. So we asked you, do you currently plan to send your child into school buildings for in-person instruction that will involve students coming to school on some type of rotating basis, which would allow for social distancing because a normal opening is not possible? So in that survey, as Mr. Markarian noted, 80% of parents indicated that they preferred a blended learning model, while 20% indicated they would prefer a 100% virtual model. So as a result of that, and because the state of New Jersey Department of Education has announced that they will be providing us with guidance on how we can offer a 100% virtual program, we will be offering both programs. In a blended learning model, we're combining in-person instruction with at-home remote learning so that we can divide students into two groups and bring them into school for some of their instruction. This will allow us to provide for social distancing that is recommended by the New Jersey Department of Education. To do this, we're currently working to divide the students into two groups, and we will be keeping the families together throughout the district in this cohorting model. They will be divided randomly, not by grade and not alphabetically. So in this picture illustrates our cohorting schedule and our cohorting model. You see that the groups are the same at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school. The students in Group A will be in school for instruction on Monday and Tuesday, while the students in Group B will learn remotely from home. And on Thursday and Friday, the students in Group B will be in school for their instruction, and the students in Group A will learn remotely from home. On Wednesdays, you'll notice that at the 6 to 12 level, all students will attend school remotely in all of their classes. While in the elementary school, from pre-K to 5, the students will alternate groups A and B every other week for in-person instruction. You'll notice at the bottom of each of those of the building levels that we have a daily instruction cohort, and these are students who are identified for daily instruction in different programming that we provide that Mrs. O'Connell will explain in just a few minutes. So I'm going to now introduce Mrs. Hosany, the principal of Mount Prospect School, and she will explain our plans for the elementary schedule.
Thank you, Mrs. Fox, and good evening, everyone. As you can see, the elementary school schedule is following a slightly longer than the traditional early dismissal schedule. It is going until 1 o'clock. Over the course of 10 days, the A and B students will have 5 days of in-school instruction and 5 days of at-home instruction. Thus, we will strive to optimize the times when teachers will have students in small groups. All students in school, at home, and virtual will begin their day at 8:45 with a class meeting. Teachers will use this time to connect with the students for community building activities and daily preparation for the day ahead. Specials will be on a traditional schedule with a set day and time for all students to attend, either in person or virtually. Students will dismiss school beginning at 1 p.m. Teachers will then check in with their at-home students on designated days during the afternoon block to offer guidance, review, additional support, and feedback. Next slide, please. We will talk about the virtual-only students later in the presentation. For the students that are on the A and B rotation, a typical in-school day will focus on lessons in reading, writing, and math using small group and individual instruction. Instruction is going to be a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning. Lessons will follow the same scope and sequence set forth by our curriculum writing teams taking place right now. Lesson objectives will be formulated based on content standards, essential questions, and unit goals. Teachers will prepare a learning environment in which students will be introduced to a new learning objective via pre-recorded videos or during live in-person small groups. Using explicit teaching opportunities and methods, skills and concepts will be reinforced during these small group and sessions. Guided practice with students will assist in consolidating these new skills and ideas. Independent practice and review will allow students to extend skills and knowledge on their own. Teachers will utilize Seesaw or Google Classroom to coordinate assignments and weekly agendas for all students, regardless if they are at home or in school. In the first few weeks of September, teachers and students will spend the time becoming accustomed to all new rules and procedures, learning new technology platforms and technology etiquette, and will demonstrate their knowledge through formal and informal assessments. The at-home students will be engaged in pre-recorded lessons, guided practice, independent work, and project-based learning that complements the in-school lessons. Science and social studies will either be integrated into language arts or delivered during the at-home day. More detailed information will be provided later in August. Regardless of which group a student is in, there will be a continuity of instruction that is both rigorous and structured with increased accountability. Each building administrative team is creating arrival and dismissal procedures following all state and health guidelines. Specific information will be disseminated to parents prior to the beginning of the new year. Screening protocols were just explained earlier by Mr. Makarian and will be communicated officially by September. Our classrooms will have a different look from the classrooms that we know now. We are reducing the amount of furniture and items within the classroom. Mask breaks and snack breaks will be strategically built into these schedules. We are developing classroom management routines for students when they enter the classroom so that we can optimize their learning, yet still maintain health and safety. Our most fundamental goal, as been said so eloquently by the people who preceded me, is that we are focusing on the whole child, academically, social, and emotionally, because we know a lot of that social and emotional was missing in the spring, and we want to really build those connections. I have to sincerely thank all of my administrative colleagues in our Return to Instruction K-5 Task Force Subcommittee who have given freely of their time and their knowledge to be with us over the past 4 months. Without their thoughts and ideas, we would not have a solid plan before us. As we continue to collect teacher and parent feedback in the next few weeks, we will fine-tune the many nuances which come with all of these challenges. Please feel free to contact any elementary administrator for questions you may have. I would like to thank you for all the input, because every time we talk, we have different wonderful debates and discussions, and we're continually fine-tuning and honing all of our plans. We're very excited to see our students come back, and we look forward to September. That's going to be in our memories. So thank you, and I would like to now introduce Mrs. Karen Hudak, the principal of William Annan, and Dr. Russ Lazovic, principal of Ridge High School.
Thank you, Ms. Hosany. Dr. Lazovic and I will be sharing the responsibility of communicating the 6 through 12 reopening plan. And I know that many of you are wanting to understand the differences between the spring of 2020 and certainly how we'll be reopening school in September. As Mr. Markarian and my colleagues have alluded to, it will be different and unlike any other, and we are working daily to make sure that the students' health and safety, as well as their instructional needs, are on the forefront of all of the decisions that we have been making and will continue to make as we evaluate our plans moving forward. So one of the differences that we are going to be showing you shortly is the 6 through 12 schedule, where students will be meeting consistently daily in their cohorts with their teachers. They will also have opportunities in the afternoon to be able to reach out to their teachers for additional support, as well as small group and guided lesson activities. This schedule will provide us with the opportunity to have flexibility for the different environments, as well as the different cohorts that we're going to be doing in this hybrid. Each cohort of students will have 3 in-class meetings per week, and Those meetings will include direct instruction by staff and teachers. In addition to those meetings, we're going to have clearly defined expectations for both the students and the teachers as we reopen in September. Weekly agendas will be communicated out with the scope and sequence for the students as well as the families to follow. Essential questions, objectives, as well as goals will be outlined. Students' expectations will be clearly defined, and a good percentage of our time in the reopening of school will be spent familiarizing students with what they can expect at both the middle school and the high school. Google Classroom will be the platform that will be utilized, among other different types of techniques. In addition, student attendance will be taken by period. In the spring, attendance was taken in the morning for our students, and they were marked as present. Now we are shifting into a model where their attendance will be taken by period in both the middle and the high school. Dr. Lazovic?
Thank you, Ms. Hudak. Given the safety requirements in order to keep our buildings functioning and safe, we are only able to bring our students in on a cohort basis, either A or B. But our teachers were adamant that there needed to be time within our schedule where classes could meet as a whole. And so on Wednesdays, all of our student cohorts will be attending their full schedule, as we'll show in a little bit, meeting with each of their classes and their peers throughout the full day. Now, this blended environment allows the students to get together, for teachers to review what has happened over the previous cycle, and to set students up to be successful as we move through this blended learning model for the coming 5 days.
So what will the students be doing at home? As Ms. Hosny had alluded to, it's very similar instructional pattern at the secondary level. Students are going to be reinforcing and advancing their learning through assignments and activities that have been pre-taught and assigned during their direct teaching classes. In addition to that, students are going to have the opportunity to connect with their teachers live for instructional questions or additional supports that they may need during afternoon sessions, which we will show you that block in our schedules, which are forthcoming. Next slide, please.
One of the most significant obstacles that public schools are facing at this point is the feeding of our students and staff during a full day of school, which is why across the state you see so many districts moving initially to some form of a modified single session day. However, our students will continue to follow in our model their set schedule, which means that they will have at some point within their 2 days in and 2 days out a lunch period. We're going to maximize the opportunity of having that time built into the schedule by, number one, focusing on students' social and emotional well-being, whether working with counselors or parts of our other program, meeting with other support staff, ensuring that our students are succeeding on the health side, not just academically. We're going to provide specific opportunities for students to get help and assistance using our virtual platforms to ensure that they're able, both while in school and out of school, to access the resources that the district's providing, and that will make them successful academically. We're going to spend a significant amount of time focused on executive functioning. What skills do students need to be successful in this environment throughout the course of the year, knowing that not only will these skills help the students in this blended learning environment, but mastering these skills will serve the students extremely well beyond their high school education. There are a number through the year of annual assemblies that the district offers to students in order to provide access to information, resources, and opportunities that we will be leveraging within these special times, within lunch and other free periods, if you will, so that the students do not miss out on these opportunities just because we're in this blended learning model. And most importantly, as we dive into the actual schedules in a minute, the way this is built, there is ample opportunity for students to constantly find assistance based on their needs, whether they're academic, social, emotional, or other. These periods that are embedded into our schedule allow our staff members a multitude of creative ways to access and connect with students both in person and at home.
And what about the other instructional programming? The elective courses, particularly at the secondary level, offer a myriad of challenges when you're looking at health and safety due to the number of opportunities that students are sharing materials. After we have defined our instructional model, we're going to be working with our colleagues to create opportunities for students to participate in these programs in a safe and healthy manner. In addition to that, the Ridge High School schedule for labs will certainly be evaluated as well. Students will have assigned labs on their schedules. However, Labs will be phased into the student schedules at the high school. Students will not begin in a lab setting immediately in September, but those opportunities will present themselves as available and as safety precautions and needed measures are taken. In addition, Mr. Markarian had also mentioned this early on in the presentation, option 2 at Ridge High School will be on pause for marking period 1, and that will be evaluated at a later date as well. Next slide, please.
Obviously, we're in this situation because this is a safety issue and safety protocols are of primary concern. We are currently working with all of our administrators, our teachers and support staff as we review our arrival and dismissal procedures. As was mentioned before, our specific health screenings and the process that we will go through to ensure that every person who enters our building has been deemed safe. Face coverings will be required throughout the school day. Although we are also looking at the possibility for outdoor instructional opportunities and safe areas where students and staff can get out of the building. And finally, we are mapping out full plans, which will include signage, both on the floors, the walls, on doors, and coaching of students and staff to ensure an appropriate and safe flow as students transition through the building from arrival to dismissal.
So how are we going to be addressing snack and face covering breaks at the secondary level? Dr. Lazovic and I will be setting up clear guidelines and protocols that meet all the safety regulations of our students, including those with allergies. We will define these very clearly for our students, staff, and parents prior to the opening of school, because as we had mentioned, each of these comes with health risks that we want to make sure we have the necessary mitigating factors set up for students to keep them safe. As far as face covering breaks, now that we are working with the medical professionals and the health professionals to determine when and how is the best opportunity to include face covering breaks for students during a school setting. And again, safety is on the forefront for all of our staff and students in providing these during the school session when students may be in closer proximity in the buildings.
We've gotten a ton of questions about activities. There's so much that is important to our students and our staff that is beyond the core academic program. Unfortunately, within phase 1, as we do re-enter school slowly, things like field trips and club activities will not be functioning. We will reassess this as we move through and obviously follow the guidance of our health safety officials. I mentioned assemblies before as far as internal. One of the things that we will not be continuing through phase 1 are the assemblies where we're bringing folks from the outside into our schools. For the time being, those opportunities will be shut down and we will look to reassess and see what we can do as the health situation changes.
So this is the middle school schedule, and for those of you who are familiar with our time frames, we are starting at our normal arrival time of 7:45 and extending a little bit beyond our normal abbreviated day dismissal to 1 p.m. If you're looking at cohorts on Monday and Tuesday, you will see that our students who are in cohort A will participate in 4 of their scheduled courses, periods 1 through 4. And at the end of the day, they will have the advisory period. That period is the opportunity for students to engage in SEL instruction, as well as opportunities for them to have lessons, whether it's virtual assemblies, opportunities to meet with school counselors, in addition, opportunities to meet with teachers for different instructional needs. For that same cohort, they will then go through periods 5 through 9 on their second day. Since each middle schooler has a lunch, each day is consistent of 1 daily advisory. If I was a 6th grade student, my lunch normally runs period 5, and so I would have, in essence, that advisory period on period 5. Once school is dismissed for the day, you will see that students and teachers have an opportunity to eat lunch and transit to their next place. And then in the afternoon, you'll see the pink block where it talks about what our teachers will be doing during 60-minute intervals, meeting with virtual and remote learning tutorials for our students, as well as Zoom check-ins to make sure that students can get feedback and extra help. The similar schedule is set up for the cohort B, which happens on Thursday and Friday. Wednesday is where you'll see the difference, and this is where students have a little bit of a later start time at the middle school. They're now beginning their day at 8 a.m. and they're going a few moments later in the day till 1:50. This day is really important because it allows our teachers to bring all the students together, and they will have 30-minute classes with 10-minute breaks in between, where students are going to be checking in and following their normal day schedule. It also obviously has built-in breaks for lunch, and students will follow their normal school breaks when they're at home in this remote learning environment.
So much about the Ridge High School schedule is similar to the schedule that Ms. Hudak just described. Our students will be broken up into cohorts, either A or B, and those A or B students actually follow through in the same flow. They'll have 2 days of in-school instruction and 2 days of at-home instruction, with that special Wednesday as described earlier in between. As our lunches at the high school are set a little bit differently, and we have to ensure that we can share staff both with the middle school and with the elementaries, as the schedule you see actually runs directly from periods 1 through 5 on the first day, and periods 6 through 9 with that advisory period, as Ms. Hudak mentioned, an opportunity for us to touch base with students and make sure they're getting the consistent support that they need beyond academics. There is a great deal of responsibility and individual determination built into the schedule for our high school students, but as you'll see, the structure itself also provides a web of support so that we can ensure that students are successful. After those 5 periods, either on the Monday or Tuesday, you'll notice that there is a set period for teacher lunch, student transit, as well as student lunch. And then we move into that virtual tutorial, which is initially established for those students who are in the cohort that are at home on that given day, to be able to touch base during scheduled time with their specific teachers to get help as they're working from home. On Monday and Tuesday, you'll notice that cohort A is in school. On Thursday and Friday, cohort B students would be in school. That Wednesday in between allows us to stay consistent with our elementary schedule and the AB cohort, ensuring that families who have children in multiple schools have those children attending schools on the same day and at home on the same day. As well, as mentioned before, it allows our teachers the opportunity to meet with their full classes. Now, ideally, we'd want everyone in school, but due to safety, the only way to safely meet with our entire class is virtual. So that entire Wednesday will be all at-home learning for our students, and students will, as you can see, follow through half-an-hour classes with significant break in between. We don't want our students to be staring at the screen directly for multiple hours in a given day, and this allows both to happen. At the end, though, there is a 30-minute period built in for that virtual tutorial again, so that students can touch base with the staff as they need. As students follow this class, study halls, the lunch period, they will have ample opportunity to touch base both with their own teachers as well as with other teachers in the content area to constantly ensure that they are understanding the academic curriculum, as well as having opportunity to touch base with those support staff members should they have the students be struggling in any way, shape, or form with this blended learning model. And now I have the opportunity.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Dr. Lazovic, to interrupt you. I made a mistake. I just want to go back and make sure that I clarify that the middle school schedule does not end at 1 p.m. It actually ends at a 12:15 dismissal, and that was I had misspoken there, so my apologies.
No worries, Ms. Hudak, thank you. And with that, obviously this is a schedule for our general education students, but there are a number, as Ms. Fox mentioned before, of populations that we want to make sure get the support that they need. And I am happy at this point in time. I'm looking forward to make sure she's on.
I'm here.
There she is, Ms. Jean O'Connell.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, the special education cohort is going to follow very closely to the general education cohorts at every level. However, we found out very early and very quickly with our first round of virtual learning that really virtual learning is not optimal for all of our students. So what we decided to do was take a look at what the schedules of the general education students would be having and to add on a little bit more to our special education cohort so that we really can meet the needs of our most vulnerable learners. Here we're looking at our special education, our elementary resource rooms, and our self-contained. Our resource rooms, just to remind people at this level, are usually students that are struggling in reading and writing and are quite a few grade levels below. What we usually try to do is give them the strategies that they need to hopefully catch on to their reading aspect, or also we have to give them specific deficit areas where they're lacking. Those are the things we work on in the resource room along with general education. We don't want them to fall too far behind in their general education curriculum. So as a result, what we have decided to do at the elementary level was to incorporate 5 days. Both our LLD students and our resource room students will attend 5 days a week from 8:45 to 1 o'clock. LLD and resource room students will participate in general education classrooms on the day their assigned A or B cohorts are in person. LLD and resource room students may or may not participate in general educations on the day that their assigned letter A or B is remote, but they are in person. If they do not attend and participate in general education classes on their assigned letter A or B is remote, they will remain in those special education classes with the exception of specials. The reason that we're doing this is that because during that period, we're going to be able to, or during those days, give those students the added attention that they may possibly need. Hopefully, they're not going to miss on inclusion opportunities, they're not going to miss out on general education opportunities, but also they're going to get the much needed additional information that they're going to need and the learning that they're going to need to be successful. A similar program is going to be followed at the BD levels. Many of our BD students in the elementary school go into general education classrooms, and some of them spend a great deal of their day in a general education classroom. So they will also attend 5 days a week, and they may or they will participate in general education classes on the day that their assigned letters, A or B, are in person. When these classes are remote, there are times they may participate in those classes, but we may spend some of that other time working with those students on their social, emotional, and behavior supports. Those are the areas of deficit that those students seem to face. We want to keep that consistent when they're in school, when both they're in their general education class and when they're in their self-contained class. This will give us the opportunity to be able to do that. If a child should have all ICS classes, of course, they would just go to school on their assigned letter day, A or B, on site. They would be remote on the days that their letter A or B is off site. It sounds a bit confusing, but hopefully we'll get it all. Special education self-contained classes. Now these are students that are assigned to a specific class and they stay predominantly with one teacher. At the high school level, they do rotate through a series of different teachers, but predominantly this cohort of students stay together throughout the course of the day. Our CAP students from pre-K all the way to age 21 will also come in 5 days a week. They will dismiss the same time that their buildings are dismissed. In the afternoon, these students and these teachers will work with the students and the families virtually. At this point, they will address self-care issues, parent training, and technology, because we understood and what we saw when we were out last time is there needs to be a great deal of more technology for our students to become somewhat more independent and become independent learners on technology. Our PALS program are our preschool students. They will continue to run 4 days a week with a modified schedule depending on the arrival times of the building. And we're looking to add an additional virtual day on day 5. So we can continue working with those students, even at age 3 and 4, on accessing technology because we really feel that this is the direction we're all moving in. Our vocational skills program at the high school will go 5 days a week, very similar to our CAP program. They will dismiss with the buildings. In the afternoon, these teachers and students will work together with families virtually to address self-care, parent training, technology, review job skills, and if at all possible, go to job sites. Next slide, please. Our last group of students that we're going to discuss tonight are resource room and ICS students. Now, we have many students very specifically at the middle school and the high school that have a combination. They don't have all ICS and they don't have all resource rooms. Those students will follow the cohorts and they will come into school with their cohort at the middle school, and they would also do the same thing at the high school. Co-teachers will be working with them. They will give them time to work to develop to ensure that the students in the ICS and the ICR settings receive all their modifications. IEPs will be fully implemented. They will work with the classroom teachers. They will work with assignments that the students may have. They will direct the students on Google Classroom, and they will also present to them in various ways so that these students can be successful. Special education teachers may add additional time that they can possibly meet with the student during remote learning. This is something that they did while we were out before. This is something that they continue to do. There will be tutorial periods for them to work with the students in both ICS and resource room settings. We will monitor the progress of all of those students. We will continue to implement the study strategies curriculum, and we will make sure that the students are making meaningful progress in both the general ed curriculum and they're meeting their goals and objectives in their IEPs. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all your contributions. Ms. Fox, Ms. O'Connell, Mr. Lazovic, Ms. Hosny, Ms. Hudak, very much appreciated all of your contributions. Thank you for joining us tonight and sharing that information with everyone. So I think that was a pretty clear explanation, or at least I hope you think so, relative to the one of the two models that we're looking to bring forth in September, right? The blended learning model, where students are spending half of their day in school getting instruction and half of their day remotely getting instruction, working independently, and making academic progress. In addition to running that blended model, of course, we also want to be able to offer a 100% virtual model. And as we defined earlier, this would be for families who make the determination that they would prefer not to send their child to school at all. These families would be keeping the children at home, and all of their instruction would happen virtually. This obviously represents a unique challenge for us to try to be able to provide two instructional programs at the same time with the same staff, with the same team of educators, trying to provide services for both students that are sitting in classrooms in front of them and also for students that are spending all of their days at home and not coming to school at all. It's a unique challenge for us, somewhat dividing our efforts. And I think parents need to understand that it would be our goal to do our very best work in this regard, but it is going to be a unique challenge, one that we haven't taken on before, and it may well have its bumps in the road, candidly. Teachers working with students who are in front of them and also trying to have a hand in what's happening with the students that are at home is a unique situation. So with that said, I'd like to try to describe a little bit of how we envision that scenario playing out. Understanding that a lot of what we are able to do is connected to staff, okay? When we build master schedules, we are looking at our staff, our sectioning, and the numbers of students that we have in each of those sectioned requests. For example, how many students would like to take photography? How many students would like to take AP Calculus? How many students are in the third grade? We have to match up the number of students wanting particular services with the staff providing those services. Right now, we have a preliminary estimate from all of you who are kind enough to submit survey responses for each of your children in that 80-20 split that we've described a couple of times. 20% of families seeking this 100% virtual model. When we get to decision mode, that we'll talk about in a little bit, I don't know if it's going to play out exactly that way and how well the staffing will break up to match up with the students that would like to be at home. So it is a unique challenge. We're up for it. We look forward to the challenge, but it will be unique and it will present some bumps along the way whenever we do something brand new. Truthfully, that can be said about the in-person hybrid, in-person blended learning model that we described as well. But in this case, we don't really know how many students are going to be pursuing each of these models of instruction. So with all of that said, let's talk a little bit about the virtual only student, or the student that is at home 100% of the time at the elementary level. All of the virtual students would remain rostered with a traditional homeroom teacher. So imagine school were starting typically in September of 2019. The students are all assigned their homeroom teachers. We still need to do that same work because our goal is that the students will ultimately be able to come back, all of them in person, with their regular, traditionally assigned homeroom teacher. So that work needs to that work needs to happen with that ultimate goal and ultimate hope in mind. Clearly, if parents make a selection to keep a child home, that's going to skew all of those homeroom teacher assignments. They essentially need to then have a second teacher assigned to them as a virtual teacher. That teacher would then be responsible for the core instruction of the children that are staying home on a 100% virtual basis. Additionally, those students would attend virtual live sessions with their homeroom teacher for class meetings and specials. This keeps them connected to their traditionally assigned homeroom teacher throughout the school day, through specials and other opportunities that the students that are coming to school on an in-person part-time basis are also receiving. Designated time at the end of the day would allow for the classroom teacher to hold a Zoom check-in with their virtual-only students. At the 6-12 level, it's a different model. All the virtual students would remain rostered in their scheduled classes. Each teacher then would be responsible for the students on their roster. Students would interact with their teachers virtually for all the classes as they engage in a variety of teacher or student-directed activities. Again, designated time at the end of the day would allow for the classroom teacher to hold a Zoom check-in with their virtual-only students. If extracurricular activities are operating, virtual-only students would be afforded the opportunity to participate. Again, the goal is to be able to have a seamless transition back to school and allow the student to become a part of their in-school classes. The ultimate goal being that all students come back to school. Their schedule is ready and in place for them. In this fashion, the students would already be used to working with their teachers that they were assigned at the start of the school year, and when they come back to school in person, they would also be connected to the original teachers on their schedule. This raises an interesting challenge for us in trying to provide a virtual-only setting for students. The concept of returning back to school for in-person time after having initially chosen to remain out of school for a 100% virtual instruction program. Again, schedules are connected to students, students are connected to teachers. While this may seem like it's a straightforward matter, when special accommodations are made, arranging staff differently, especially at the K-5 level, to provide instruction to students at home when they want to return to school, it presents a reshuffling, if you will, of resources in order to provide students with the instruction that they need. This may require that we have certain checkpoints in time where we are able to bring students back into the fold for in-person instruction. While we're still formulating the reality of that situation, we anticipate that students who select a 100% virtual environment will not be able to return to school on any given day at their choice. They may need to wait for certain checkpoints, such as the end of a trimester or perhaps the end of a semester at the high school, something that provides us the opportunity to reorganize staff if necessary to accommodate a student's return to school. A similar situation could be had if students that start in person during the beginning of the school year later decide that they would like to engage in the virtual only option. again, figuring out how to do that may require certain checkpoints in time where we're able to facilitate such changes. It's not going to be the kind of thing that's easy to do on a singular basis day to day, and I do not anticipate that we will be able to provide that level of flexibility on a daily basis. It brings us to a difficult challenge, a difficult question for families. Are parents still in the same mindset they were when they took the initial survey indicating a preference? I don't know. Obviously, we are in a situation where conditions and information seems to change almost daily. But we are offering two programs for our families and our students: a blending learning model or a 100% virtual model. In order to make that happen, we will need parents to make a clear choice. And the next time that we ask parents to make this choice, it will not be a simple preference, but rather a true commitment to what you would like for your children as we open school in September. We will provide parents with a form and specific instructions to help them process this choice. The goal is to issue that information for tomorrow, Monday at the latest. But clearly, we are approaching the end of July. In order for us to move forward to implement a dual instructional program, a hybrid instructional program, where we offer both a blended learning model with an in-person and remote component, and also a 100% virtual model, we really do need to know on an individual student basis whether or not you want one model or the other model for your child. So we will be sending you the ability to make that choice as soon as possible, with the hope of having all responses back by the end of July to give us a full month to finalize the plans to make this happen in September. All the best laid plans sometimes do not come to pass. We continue to deal with ever-changing conditions and unknowns. We have provided for you our best plans in order to open school in person in some capacity in September, and to also provide you an option for 100% virtual learning. To date, we still have not received any information about how our plans would ultimately be approved by the state of New Jersey. I certainly hope our current plan will be approved, but I don't know yet exactly what that approval process entails. Given the timeframes that we're working under, that cannot stop us from making our best efforts to move forward if we have any hope of enacting these plans. We've offered a 100% virtual model for students. It was announced earlier this week that guidance regarding these 100% virtual models is forthcoming. Though we have not received the information yet, it may impact what we have shared this evening. Certainly, we may have to make some tweaks or adjustments to be responsive to requirements that we receive, but nonetheless, we are committed to providing a 100% virtual model for students. Finally, we know that conditions in a pandemic are not something we have the luxury of controlling. We don't know if there will be a change in health conditions. We don't know if there may be directives or executive orders that could impact our plans to open schools in September for in-person instruction in some capacity. We hope and pray that the state of New Jersey and the health of its residents improves and improves and improves, along with the health of our entire country and world, so that we can move forward to provide instruction in the ways that we really would prefer. However, as they say, It is what it is. We are making the best of the situation that we are in. We thank you for your attention this evening. We thank you for your patience and your help in helping us to help you. On that front, I would like to share a few things for you to consider with regard to how parents can help. We've received many questions on this topic, and there are some simple things. Some things I've written to you about, or some things have been alluded to in various surveys or conversations or other meetings that we've had together. One of our issues is transportation. Many parents in their survey indicated that they were willing to provide transportation to school. Clearly, that helps us with our social distancing on the school bus. Now, I know, because I've been in the traffic lines with you sometimes, that the process of parent drop-off and parent pickup is sometimes less than pleasant and a little bit slow. In the cohorting model that we've described, we anticipate bringing in no more than half the students on any given day. So for parents who are able to drive their child to school and create a little extra space on the school bus, hopefully the traffic situation would be much improved. If you can help in that way, that's wonderful. We appreciate it. We appreciate the extra distance that you create on the bus when you're able to drive your child to school when they would have otherwise taken the bus. We talked about screening tonight. We could use your help in screening the health of students before they come to school. Screening with fidelity, making sure to the best of your knowledge that you're sending your child to school in a healthy way would be a great help for all of us. This is not a new practice. However, it's a practice that now needs to be documented, and we will work to make that as easy as possible for you. If you don't have a thermometer at home, now would be a good time to procure one. We ask that you provide your child a mask when they come to school. We ask that you create a learning space for your child. All of the students will have a need to spend some time working at home, many of them in an environment like we're using right now, in front of a camera, with the camera on, so that we can hold everyone accountable. Creating a space for students to work in is something that you could help with, and we certainly appreciate that help. Communicating with teachers, you were great about that in the spring. We know you'll be great about that going forward, but teachers want to help. Communicating with them is the best way to understand what's going on with your child. Those are just a few things you can do to help, and I thank all of you who have been asking for that information about how can we help. Thank you again for your attention this evening. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. Thank all of the administrators who did such a beautiful job presenting this impressively detailed plan that we know you labored over for quite some time and had many iterations of. Before we go to the public comment, which I know has been coming in as the presentation is going on, I just want to review. Please be reminded the public comment is a portion of our agenda is not structured as question and answer session, but rather as an opportunity to share your thoughts. The board may or may not be able to respond to your public comment. Any board response to the public comment will generally be addressed during board forum, although we're going to do it tonight right in the context of this section of the agenda. All comments are considered and will be investigated and addressed as appropriate. Please be courteous and mindful when you send your comments if you haven't already sent them. We are not permitted to respond to public comment about students or employees. Please understand the board will not be responsible for the content of comments made by members of the public, and members of the public are cautioned that they are commenting at their own risk with regard to individuals if mentioned in their comments. And we thank you for the time and attention you've given. And Ms. Fox, if you're ready, I think we're ready to hear public comment.
Okay. The first one is from Vilma Mendez, 370 Mount Airy Road. Good evening. What are you doing about air filtration in the classrooms? I would like to make a recommendation with the proposed cost. Information attached. Air purifiers catch viruses. These machines are being used in pharmaceuticals, clean room. It covers 12,000 cubic feet, which is about 524 square feet. We would need one per classroom, no more than 35. It would be 38,500 for 35 classrooms. We would need to address hallways, administrative offices, etc. All of this for less than 50,000. Debbie Marcus, 16 Lafayette Lane. Please clarify plans for how PE will work so parents can make an informed decision about whether to pay for an option 2 activity, since an extra study hall is less relevant if kids are home half the time. Will school PE be by Zoom? How many days a week? Max Albee, 96 Alder Lane, Basking Ridge. Hi, I'm Max Albee. I will be a senior at Ridge this September. I'm writing to express my thoughts and feelings about the upcoming school year. I know we've been hearing a lot from parents, but shouldn't we be hearing from the people that are actually affected, like myself and other students, as well as teachers? First off, we should be in school in some capacity in person in September. Why? Well, as a student who experienced what virtual learning has to offer, I can say it's not the same as an in-person class. The education that us students need cannot be sufficiently fulfilled virtually, no matter how hard anyone tries. Secondly, the damage that virtual learning has caused on students, not only in the sense of academic regression, but also mental health-wise. Students with mental health issues have only gotten worse through the past couple months of distance learning. Without being able to socialize and learn in a classroom environment, students are left to sit alone behind a computer to learn by themselves. Now, a proper and fair solution to the problem we're facing tonight of whether to send kids back to school or not is to open up the school and let the students' parents decide to send their kids or not. Why would it be fair to make students who are comfortable being in the classroom stay at home for another year? It wouldn't. Now, to end, let's talk about the risk of students getting sick and the possibility of a student passing away. So far in the state of New Jersey, people under the age of 18 account for 2.7% of all cases. There's been 2 deaths under the age of 18 as well, and both of those children were under the age of 5 and both had pre-existing medical conditions. Also, according to the CDC, asymptomatic spread of the virus is rare. I know the health of our teachers is something we need to consider. However, as we learned last week, between 80 to 85% of teachers would be comfortable returning to school. In the state of New Jersey, the average age of a teacher is 41. Adults under the age of 45 also have a very rare chance of succumbing to the virus, similar to children. It's very easy to protect our teachers as they usually have a significant amount of distance from students. The teachers can be equipped with face shields and masks and stay in the front of the classroom for the whole class, away from the students. To conclude, here's a startling statistic that should show you how rare a child dying from the virus is. A child in America is 66,667 times more likely to be sold to human traffickers than to die of COVID-19. Thank you for listening, and I hope you take what I've said into consideration when finalizing your plans for the upcoming school year. Alicia Martin, 118 Blackburn Road. I have 3 questions regarding the proposed hybrid school schedule. 1, how can they accomplish in 2.5 days a week of classes in what used to take 5 days a week? 2, I don't understand why the virtual days can't be live. Other schools had live classes last spring and didn't have privacy issues. If camera only faces front of the room where teacher is and no last names are used, I don't see the issue. It also seems much easier on the teachers to just teach live rather than wasting time recording the lesson they just taught live, especially for elementary teachers to record a lesson for math, reading, writing, and science or social studies every day. 3, on in-person days at Ridge, if we have periods 1 through 5 on Monday and 6 through 9 on Tuesday, one of those 4 through 8 periods is usually lunch. With no lunch, is that an automatic study hall? Mark Rosenblatt, 30 Cameron Court. Thank you to the board and to the superintendent. I appreciate all of your hard work during what is a difficult and unprecedented time. I am sure it has not been easy. I wanted to ask if any consideration has been given to out-of-the-box solutions. For example, setting up tents and heaters in fields and parks. This could allow for more in-person education while also providing safety through social distancing and good ventilation. This is one of multiple potential ideas that might help us better address the current constraints. If the issue is budgetary, have we considered passing the hat? I know I would contribute and imagine many others would as well. A few years ago, a substantial sum was raised in this manner to help ensure we maintained full-day kindergarten. If given the chance, I believe many parents and neighbors would jump at the opportunity to help provide a better and/or safer educational experience for our children. I apologize that some of these issues were already discussed as I wrote this prior to listening to the full meeting. Thank you. Jill, there's no address on this one, I'm sorry. Linda Tommen, 28 Wellington Drive. I have a 4th grader and will choose the all virtual option for the fall. My question is, will the school provide the children who are learning from home all of the textbooks and workbooks that they normally receive in school? It was very difficult in the spring when we did not have a physical textbook for math and other subjects. It would be easier for the child to learn if they had physical textbooks and workbooks that they had in the past. Sharon Gopal, 20 Evergreen Place. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. I want to first thank every one of you, our school administrators and staff, for working tirelessly to adhere to New Jersey's reopening plan and adopt a plan for Bernards Township. I want you to know that I recognize your efforts and am grateful to all. I have 2 questions. My first question, general estimates from the School Superintendent Association show cleaning and PPE costs to be considerable. The costs for an average school district of 3,600 students, 8 buildings, about 330 staff members, and 40 buses transporting at 25% capacity will have to spend an additional $1,778,139 to follow safety protocols needed to bring students back into classrooms. These were described as, quote, not meant to be exhaustive, but illustrates how the overall cost of school operations will substantially increase to safely reopen as a direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic, end quote. The costs are broken down into 4 categories. One is health monitoring, cleaning, and disinfecting. One of the costs in this category is deep cleaning of a school after a confirmed COVID-19 case, which is estimated to cost $26,000 per school per confirmed COVID case. Since we are a school district with approximately 5,400 students, which is larger than the association's estimate, and also have more school staff, can you please indicate what the estimated costs associated with cleaning our schools will be as per the association's average cost estimates? Also, in a scenario where just 3 of our 6 schools would have 1 confirmed COVID case each, and applying the association's estimate for deep cleaning a school after 1 COVID case, in 3 buildings, it would total an estimated $78,000. Given what we are seeing nationally with new infections over 65,000 a day and trending towards 100,000 a day, and seeing New Jersey's rate of transmission surpass the target benchmark of under 1.0, I believe it is pragmatic to have contingencies in place to expect that there will be COVID cases that arrive in our schools. Have you had discussions, or is there a point where, not just for cost containment, but for safety reasons, the board has decided it would close schools? My second question was to ask if you could please share what, if anything, has been done to address each school's HVAC system and share details on how this will be addressed. Thank you. Jean Wyman, 194 North Maple Ave. Has any thought been made for reinstating February break to a full week to reduce winter germs, and also to not use those days as make-up snow days? I'm just thinking a social distance week is a good idea during flu season, even under normal conditions. Thanks. Bridget Mulvaney, 33 Wedgewood Drive. Would it be a better plan for elementary teachers to leave at 1 p.m. after the dismissal of all students, so that there is less exposure for them? After all, we have to consider the health and safety of the teachers too. Otherwise, there won't be optimum delivery of service. Stacy Letty, 67 Spencer Road. I think most parents are realistic about kids being in the classroom, but the overwhelming majority of parents and students have been asking you for more details on what remote learning looks like. We have been begging you for that detail and we still do not have it. The social emotional wellness of our students is important to all of us, and there's no way that we can adequately keep them engaged in a healthy way without regular daily contact from their teachers. Please tell us whether or not you are intending to have live instruction every day for students who are not in the classroom, and if not, what the reasoning is for not providing it. Sharath Chandra, 334 Mount Airy Road. 1. How do you plan to ensure social distancing in restrooms in the school building? 2. Can an additional step of temperature screening be added at the school building? 3. If we opt for 100% virtual now, can we move to in-person instruction once a vaccine is out and we feel comfortable in sending kids to school? Rebecca Musali, 64 Knoll Croft Road. Regarding SEL, how are you planning to handle these new programs when your current staff is already stretched to the limit? Elizabeth Silver, 445 Mount Airy Road. 1. Why are we not testing students, staff for COVID before return to school? Given what our health experts said at the last meeting about children being asymptomatic carriers at times, shouldn't we establish a baseline to ensure we are not starting the year with an already infected population? 2. Will social studies and science remain part of the elementary curriculum? If not, why not? 3. Will elementary students be pulled out to work with specialists and joined up with students from other classes in these groups? If so, how will cohorting be maintained? 4. Same question for before and after care. If rolled out in phase 2, wouldn't this mean cohorting no longer possible? Thank you. An address. Okay. Julie Clark, 17 East Ash Street. Thank you so much for all that the administration and staff are doing for our community. Will the district be providing PPE for teachers and staff? Also, can you talk a bit about plans for contact tracing if there are COVID cases reported in the school, and what will be the suggested plan of action for individual classes or schools? Lorraine Anderson, 31 Dryden. If 100% virtual learning occurs, how many minutes will each child receive of live distance learning instruction per day in grade 1? Ann Pinto, 16 Berkeley Circle. How are you going to ensure all students have had their health check prior to admitting them to school? Thank you for all your working so hard for our community. Udia Singh, 154 Deer Ridge Road. Question regarding HVAC filtration. What type of air filter is currently being used? Are you changing all filters to be medical grade, i.e. HEPA filter? Lori Kendis, 9 Brook Ave. Is it possible for students to start the year 100% virtually, then change to the hybrid model later on, or will there be set onboarding times? Kathleen Healy, 284 South Maple Avenue. Mrs. Hosany mentioned that the K-5 plan provides for some synchronous learning. Can you please clarify whether the students in the cohort that is not in school will be synchronously learning along with the children in school, or rather whether they will be independently working with a remote curriculum on those days? Please also clarify the rationale that science and social studies will be dealt with on the remote learning days and not in live classrooms. When do you expect to notify families which cohort group they fall in? It would be ideal if parents were able to request a particular cohort given what they already know about their work situations. Due to a lack of childcare options, I would imagine many families will find it necessary to coordinate with others, including with respect to the children of their caregivers, and this process cannot happen overnight. Finally, what measures is the district taking to ensure that our teachers are well equipped to handle what we are asking of them in terms of sufficient internet access, appropriate benefits for sick leave, and other things that may be on their minds? We appreciate all that they do for our children. Kevin Noland, 88 Harrison Brook Drive. Will neighborhoods be taken into account as many rely on each other for watching younger neighbors and carpooling? Will parents with preschoolers be able to request an A or B day so their younger child's schedule lines up with their older child? The other days are full for my youngest, so I can't switch her days at the preschool. Barbara Geary, 66 Dryden Road. Hello, my questions are focused on the elementary schools. With alternating days, will those home be able to live stream or Zoom? Will lessons be repeated, or will the teacher proceed through the lessons as if the entire class is present? Can specials be conducted remotely? This would be so the days students are in school, they are focused on the core curriculum. Will class time per subject at the elementary level be shortened as if they are operating on an abbreviated school schedule? Jen Shuckman, 174 Spencer Road. How do you plan to cover all the material in an AP course with so little instruction time and no labs? Will there be any orchestra program offered in the middle and high school? What safety measures will be present in the orchestra? This is Sundari Rao from 5 Ross Lane. I have a rising junior at Ridge High School. How many students do you plan on having in each classroom? Students who are in cohort B would be attending live classes as cohort A is in school, or is there a different setup? Noel Joffrey, 22 Belmont Court. Can you clarify in the Ridge schedule what happens in the last block that was 60 to 90 minutes in the blended model? I wasn't clear if they eat lunch and then stay at school for teacher consultation, or if they depart school for home at 12:05. Can you please clarify the intention? The Dorney family, Vivian Dorney, 122 North Maple Avenue. Now that we have a plan, will you be resending the survey? What is the protocol for parents who want to send their children to school after the projected start date and or pull their children out based on reactions to the new school environment? Is sending children or doing the virtual component a set in stone decision for the entire year? Nicole Lane, 16 Fieldview Drive. For the K-5 students on the blended model, why is there not an option for virtual live streaming of classes on days the children are learning from home? Guhan Swaminthan, sorry, I don't know if I said that right. 108 Elmwood Court, Basking Ridge. Do first grade students in CBAT have 100% virtual options? Elizabeth Vinhal, 22 Elizabeth Street. Can an LLD elementary child participate in the blended 2-day-a-week schedule, especially if have siblings in district? Malik Shah, 6 Raritan Place. Does the BOE have historical data of how many students on average get sick from one of the symptoms like cough, cold, fever, one of the symptoms for COVID? If so, is it prudent to open schools considering that even if one kid in the school gets a cold, it could lead to a school closure or otherwise can turn into community spread? Nancy Poignant, 191 Woods End. 1, As the governor has still not given the okay for indoor dining, why do the plans still include a lunchtime at all grades? Would it not be safer to eliminate lunch and end the day earlier? 2, how is academic integrity going to be addressed? There were many instances of students collaborating together for tests in the spring, and there was no way to deter that behavior. Will tests only be given on days when students are physically in school? Will virtual learners be required to take tests at the same time as in-school students with cameras active so that students can be viewed? 3, if I am reading the Ridge schedule correctly, students will be leaving the school at 12:50. Is there any reason why a student couldn't leave at lunch? And this is Shirley Cunningham, 79 Meeker Road in Basking Ridge. What will the remote instruction days look like when the other cohort is in school? Will there be a live video feed or assigned lessons? That is the last, oh wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is the last agenda item. Let me look one more time. No, I'm sorry, there are a couple more. I think this is the last one. Joanne Stream, 396 White Neck Road. In the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned going from phase 1 to 2, and that would be determined in time after school resumes. Please explain the exact criteria you will use for determining when you will go from one phase to another and how often this will be evaluated. This should be determined upfront so that the district can be nimble based on the changing nature of this epidemic. Thank you. Tina Mattiola, 34 Decker Street. At Ridge, the block set aside for advisory time and the afternoon virtual check-in sessions do not take into account students who attend the afternoon sessions at Somerset County VOTEC, as they are not available during those times. This puts them at a disadvantage, having less time to meet with teachers and advisors. Have you been in contact with the VOTEC administration to understand their return to school plan? Andra Schwab, 26 Coppergate Drive. Shouldn't the classes be live streamed on days students are home within the hybrid model? Additionally, isn't there room for clubs to initiate in person so kids can first get to know each other, then shift to alternating in-person Zoom schedule from there? Shelley Allen, 10 Birch Drive. Can you please elaborate on the virtual learning plan? What does teacher-student interaction look like? Is instruction interaction the majority of the day? Christine Corrigan, 35 Culberson Road. Thank you to the board, the administrators, and the teachers who have worked on this reopening plan. I appreciate your dedication and hard work. Many students with IEPs have significant executive function organization deficits and need support in monitoring their assignments and ensuring their completion. How are these specific accommodations going to be provided? How will additional time for testing be provided? Can you clarify, specify how individual student goals and objectives set forth in IEPs will be measured? Thank you again for your work and dedication. Monica Lynn, 166 Patriot Hill Drive. What procedure is in place if a child gets COVID? Quarantine for all exposed, virtual learning for the 6th student, and all quarantined? Camilla Ballister, 7 Yorkshire Court. What will happen if a child or staff member are reported as ill with COVID? Will the entire class cohort be asked to quarantine for 14 days? And that is the last public comment related to the agenda item at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. I want to apologize to the board members because we kind of did things out of order here, and normally the board members ask questions immediately post the presentation. At this time, although awkward, Mr. Markarian, could we go back and do the one superintendent's report item just to take care of that? Not that it should be considered housekeeping, it's very important.
If you want to get a motion and a second, I will explain the item before we vote.
Absolutely. Mr. Salmon and Mrs. Wooldridge are our first and second.
So simply put, this item on the agenda is to congratulate and certify the graduation of 456 students from the senior class at Ridge High School.
Do we need a roll call, Mr. McLaughlin?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond, Mrs. Korn,
Yeah.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who worked so hard to bring together what turned out to be 3 really beautiful graduation ceremonies for our seniors. With that, board members, before perhaps Mr. Markarian moves to answer some questions, or Ms. Fox for that matter, or any of our other administrative team, board member questions or comments or anything? Ms. Beckman.
I just had a specific question on the WAMs and the Ridge Wednesday. Period 4 was only 20 minutes, and I was wondering if that was for a specific reason or that was a typo. All the rest of the day is 30 minutes for every class.
I can tell you that was a typo.
Okay.
They're all 50 minutes. I apologize.
And then Ms. Korn had her hand up.
Yeah, I was just, you know, when we were talking, I think when Nick was talking about the busing and people driving, I was thinking that, you know, kids can ride bikes to school and they can walk. So I just was trying to think of keeping people healthy, getting outside, and it's always an option to, you know, for everybody, since I think every kid in town has a bike now because I see them riding them all over the place. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, I like the idea of using our outdoor space, but that's just opening windows. That's just me.
Mrs. White.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment, and I just would like to say thank you very much to everybody who's worked on this, because you guys have worked on this for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we've seen plans and rewritten plans and amended plans and plans that have been discarded, and you have left no stone unturned. And the reality is that every parent is not going to be happy with every plan that you have come up with, but what you have put together for us to see tonight really is the best of the best, that keeps safety and education at the forefront for our kids. It addresses families that want the option to be 100% virtual. It addresses families that want their kids back at school. And as somebody who has 3 kids still in district, I really, really appreciate it. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Ms. Richmond? Oh, sorry, Cynthia.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Jen just said. We've sat in on numerous meetings over the last few months, and we've seen all kinds of versions of the plans. And I really feel like you guys have really spent so much time and tried to do the best for all of our kids in this district. I think it's time for all of us to start, you know, making sure that we trust you guys to do the best. And, you know, I think that that you guys are the experts in the field, and that we all do appreciate what you've done. So thank you.
Mr. Salmon.
Yeah, thank you for the plan. I am unbelievably impressed by the presentation that was given tonight. I mean, like Jen and Karen said, we've seen numerous plans, numerous iterations of plans, trying to slice the apple in as many different ways as you can think of, talking about plans and poking holes in those plans. And you know, what the administration has done here is so impressive, because they've essentially redesigned the school experience from scratch with no template and very little guidance from the state. If anybody thinks the road back guidance document was actually informative or put out any parameters, it basically said, go to school, wear masks if you need to, and make sure everything's equitable. But that's basically it. So I am just unbelievably impressed. Again, not that, you know, impressing Tim Salmon means anything, but it's just amazing to see what the administration came up with here. And I think, like Mr. Markarian said, there's going to be bumps along the way, but this is a brand new venture from both virtual parents and the parents that choose the blended model. So I would encourage everyone, and like Ms. White said, and I'm in the same boat, I have 3 kids in the district, like there's going to be bumps along the way, but you know, we're all rowing in the same direction here, I think, and this is a great start for everybody to move forward in the fall. And I hope that we get to see it roll out and there's no kind of surprises from the state, because this administration has been, you know, handling those announcements, you know, with a smile and grinning and bearing it and moving on. And so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what the other board members have said. This was a very detailed, informative presentation. You know, the plans are obviously, you know, very well thought out under very difficult circumstances. So thank you, guys.
Ms. Schaefer.
This presentation was amazing, and all of us have been on these various committees over the weeks and months you guys have been working on this. I still have some unsettled feelings about the plan that's put forward. We have safety measures that we're considering, but it's sort of a false sense of security. But one of the public comments was that we, you know, aren't testing people before. We can't. We can't magically change our HVAC systems in every school to make it so it's perfect. We can't enforce parents and get, you know, hopefully we can't help get the parents on board to talk about, you know, and make sure that people are checking their kids. But there's just some pieces of this that are almost magical thinking, putting up tents outside, or, you know, making sure that students stay apart in the hallways. Any of us who have ever stepped foot into WAMS or a high school know that that is just not even a possibility, even if there are only half of the kids in the school. So I do worry about the reality of this. I think it's providing lots of choices for parents, and I think that's great. I do worry that there's sort of a false sense of security.
Ms. McEwen.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I want to echo what everyone said about all the hard work that went into this presentation, and a lot of the new slides tonight that I hadn't seen before were very, very helpful and clear. I've been like jotting down questions. The public asked like most of my questions. I have 1 or 2 written down that people have asked me in the last couple of days on my little notepad. One of them was like about VOTEC students, which I know it's not a lot of students, but obviously all districts are doing different things. So that's something that needs to be obviously figured out. And actually, I think that's the only one that the public didn't answer or ask.
Ask, yeah.
Ms. Korn.
I feel like a jerk because I didn't thank everybody, but thank you so much. But also, talking to Mrs. Schaefer, we're not guaranteeing anyone's safety. We're just trying to be as safe as we can and putting parameters in place that the CDC says has to happen. But there's no guarantees in life anytime. Like you can walk across the street and something can happen to you. But we're trying to make it as safe as we can, and people have to make, so when they say false sense of security, you're trying to make it as safe as possible, but there's never a guarantee. So if people want to go back to school, then we're making it an option for them to go back to school in the safest way possible, but there's always a risk in everything you do. So you have to assess the risk and figure it out. But I think the plans we put out, I was amazingly impressed by the breadth and the scope, and it has a little something for everybody, so that people can make an assessment for themselves and decide what they're comfortable with. And then, so I appreciate that from everybody.
I see two hands. I just want to jump in for 1 second. I apologize. I just want to say we have to remember that at this moment tonight at 8:45 or 10 to 9, we are charged with the responsibility of bringing students back to school. That is the directive from the state. Until we get direction otherwise, we have no choice to proceed, and there will be questions and concerns, and I'm sure there will be modifications, tweaks, and adaptations as we move through if we actually get the opportunity. But I just want to say thank you. I can't believe the work that has gone into this and how hard everyone has worked, and the input. I think everyone said it beautifully, so I'm not going to repeat, but the input that all of the administrative team sought from healthcare professionals, from the health department, from the bus company, from our transportation consultant, from parents, from PTO members, from board members, from teachers. It's really impressive, and I want to say thank you. And then I saw Ms. Schaefer and then Ms. White after that.
And I want to clarify, I think that having all these choices is a great option for our families. So I'm so pleased that there are different options that people can make the decisions. And I just want, people to understand we're not trying to guarantee or do anything. We're trying to ensure the safety, but we can't guarantee it. So but I really appreciate the fact that we've got a virtual option that's available for parents who wanted that.
Ms. White?
You said exactly what I was going to say about, right now we're required to bring students back. Tomorrow, next week, we could be required to do something completely different.
Mr. Salmon.
I was crossing my fingers when Jen said maybe tomorrow we might be required to. So I'm crossing my fingers for a smooth sailing until September.
I think we all need to do that. I'm sorry, I thought that was a hand raise. Anybody else? Any questions to add to the list? I would just like to really reiterate a question, so I'm hoping we can move it to the top of the list for what that's worth. I am interested to know about textbooks and materials as it relates to students who will be coming in person or staying at home, both.
Mrs. Gray, I can answer for the elementary if you'd like.
Please.
Okay, so right now we are in progress of compiling a list of what we want to call like a to-go kit and purchasing bins for students that are going to be in the A-B rotation. So if they're coming to school, we're going to have bins to have all of their materials put in. So that way we have to minimize the use of cubby areas and really try to reduce the amount of time that they're moving around the classroom. Anybody who's virtual, we'd like to get all of those materials to the students. I know many families have purchased supplies through our PTOs, and we've ordered supplies, but a lot of, at least in the elementary, we don't necessarily have textbooks. The textbooks are online, but the student consumables, such as the math workbook and handwriting, things like that, that would go home with the students. So I know there was a question specifically about that. So that our plan is to get them all wrapped up, and we would do almost like a pickup drop off like we did in June. And we would ask parents to come pick them up, and we would be ready to have that to go.
Thank you. So, Mr. Markarian, Ms. Fox, I don't know exactly how you want to handle trying to address some of the questions or group the topics, perhaps.
Yeah, so I was taking notes, and I'll do the best I can here. I'll probably ask for some help. I know Ms. Hosney and Mr. or Dr. Lazovic and Ms. O'Connell and Ms. Hudak are all with us. So thank you guys for staying around here to help out. So one of the questions I think early on was related to time. The question of time and curriculum and accomplishing curriculum with less meeting time. Clearly, that's a challenge, and that's part of the challenge that we're working through over the summer, trying to work on curriculum writing, trying to bring in more staff to prepare more realigned material to deal with that issue, but also to ask the staff to plan differently. And they have to have the time to do that. And one of the things that I know Ms. Fox worked really hard to do in building the schedule is respect the fact that teachers are being asked to do an incredible amount of pivoting in order to try to redo the way that they normally do their job to get the curriculum accomplished. Does that mean that there isn't some level of sacrifice along the way? No, it doesn't mean that, right? It means really trying to find the core tenets of all the courses that are being taught and make sure that they're addressed. A simple example that we talked about, and I know it was mentioned, was the lab issue, right? It's not necessarily going to be possible to make the time to do labs in the normal way. So I don't want there to be illusions, but a lot of work is going into trying to make sure that the core of the content in a given subject and curriculum is addressed. And I'm sure that when Ms. Fox wants to jump in, she will on that issue.
Can I add one thing to that, Mr.
Sure.
Markarian?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I would say is that getting the basics of the schedule down and the framework tonight with your approval, and then hopefully with the state approval, will allow us to do much more work going forward. Like the work will begin and address quite a lot of the questions you're asking, but until we have that and we know how much time we have and in what manner we have, some of those questions we can't answer yet, but that is going to be what we do for the next few weeks. Things like organizing textbooks to make sure that the students can get them at the beginning of the year, and the curriculum writing that is set to take place throughout the month of August. So we have a lot of work to do on most of these things, but this will give the teachers the tools to start doing that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was going to share that with a different question that came up, but it kind of applies universally.
Yeah, it does.
That in order for us to take next steps and try to pull this off, we have to kind of know that the foundation under our feet is something that isn't going to move. At least it's not going to move because somebody here feels like it should move. Somebody else might move it for us, but we here need to kind of have the go ahead to press on and build out detail, right? Build out detail on the foundation. So.
And then we certainly, the other part I was going to say is we'll be looking for a lot of different opportunities to communicate those details with students, with parents, so that everybody understands them as we are finalizing them, through trainings, through email distributions, and when school starts, certainly.
Right. So there was a question about tents. We are taking a look at tent options just to get a sense of what tent options are available, what kind of pricing is involved. If we were able to put some tents out that might facilitate some class meetings outside, we're looking at that. There was a question about cleaning and cleaning costs. Oftentimes quietly hardworking and diligently behind the scenes is our business administrator, and he needs to get a lot of credit for the work that he's doing in all of this. At the same time, he wasn't presenting tonight, but I can assure you that he is doing his mightiest efforts to try to make sure that even on the procurement side, things happen. And it's a big challenge because, as you can imagine, when you talk about cleaning costs, cleaning supplies, everybody's competing for a lot of these items, and we're in that competition mix, and it's a thankless job to be going around vendor to vendor to vendor, hounding and trying to find all the materials that we're trying to get. I mean, chasing down open purchase orders for months, unfortunately, with vendors that keep promising they're going to make deliveries and they don't. So we recognize that there are cleaning costs. We're trying to manage those cleaning costs with respect to what happens if someone tests positive, contact tracing, talking to local health officials about next steps and what to do, what cleaning's required, whether or not a school needs to be closed and clean for a period of time. All of those things are things that we are working through in our policy and procedure plans, which we do have a draft of, as I shared in the presentation tonight. And it's true that there are things that need to be further developed in those plans, no question about it. But we're trying to make sure that we're positioned well financially to respond to these different costs. Let's see, calendar questions. There have been some calendar questions that have come up. We honestly haven't gotten into that because we've been so focused on coming up with a framework for instruction. We really haven't taken a look at things like February break. The question about sending teachers home at dismissal, certainly we're looking at that issue from the perspective of, you know, if you can work remotely, then work remotely. I think that that's one of the edicts that we're currently in stage 2 in the state of New Jersey. I know the last time I read that document describing stage 2, it talked about it. If you're able to work from home, then work from home. So where that's possible, certainly we want to make that possible, but at the same time, we have to meet the needs of the students. There were a few questions about lunch periods in general. We are not looking to serve lunches at any of the schools. We are eliminating the lunch service in the cafeterias with one exception. We want to be able to produce free and reduced lunch for our students that need that service. So we would continue to provide that service as we did in the spring. Other than that, cafeterias would largely be closed and not producing a lunch service. The lunch periods during the school days, I know that both Mrs. Hudak and Mr. Lazovic spoke to that issue a little bit about how that time would be used. I don't know if you want to reiterate any of those thoughts. If you'd like to, feel free to jump in.
Those are going to be utilized as opportunities for us to meet with students, to do virtual assemblies, counseling opportunities, SEL lessons, executive functioning, skill reinforcement. I think that lunch period is a gift in some ways for us to be able to be flexible with the needs of our children when they arrive, which will constantly be assessed. And it also provides our teachers with an opportunity to be creative in their means of providing students with additional supports, whether it's academic, emotional, social, or other.
Mr. Markarian, you commented before on the reality that we need to put certain things in place, but I have to tell you, in my short time working with both the administrative team and the 10-month staff that have not missed a day coming in, they're itching to put these things together, but they weren't going to run forward until we knew what direction we were being pointed. And so they're ready to go. I have to tell you, the energy and the commitment that the staff has shown, the excitement and the ingenuity that they've had in these conversations, it's exciting. But we needed to know what the direction was. And I think now that we do, as we move forward, we'll have more information as we go. I know people are hearing a lot of categorical statements, but they're categorical because we're waiting for the direction so we can, the permission, if you will, to fill in the blanks, but they're ready to go. So I concur with everything that Ms. Hudak said and Ms. Fox said, Ms. Hosny said, the staff's ready to go.
Right, and that does speak to some of the issues that come up even in some of the things you discussed earlier, Dr. Lazovic, relative to meetings with the staff. We are having meetings with our building crisis management teams to address things that you just described, being ready to go. Let us know, is this what we're doing? One of those things, a simple example is, how are we dealing with bathrooms? What are we going to do? Well, that's a building level crisis management team type of plan that gets put into place, and knowing where we're heading allows them to work forward and make those plans. We also heard a few questions with respect to this idea of having the flexibility to be in person and then move to virtual, or be 100% virtual and then move to in person. I think that the specific question came up if there were a vaccine. Again, if we end the meeting tonight with an understanding that we have board support to move forward with our plans, that's another thing that we need to build out and state specifically for parents when we ask them to make a choice, right? And as I alluded to earlier, I really feel like it's not reasonable for us to be able to bounce back and forth on a daily basis. What's reasonable are some benchmark times. I heard one of the questions referred to that exact issue, and that's kind of where we are. We're looking at elementary schools that run on trimesters. We think that's a logical time to try to make those adjustments. At the high school level, clean breaks happen really at the semester where the schedules change. So we were kind of looking at a semester situation at the high school as to when we thought that might be appropriate to try to make adjustments for. The question spoke specifically returning to school if there were a vaccine in place. So the other thing that we talked about is when we get to a point where we can say, hey, we're ready to move to phase 3 and bring all students back, we could do that regardless of whether it was a trimester or a semester, because we're ready to go to a full scale. Logically, we probably would want to time it at a grade period refresh, if you will. It just helps us from an organizational standpoint, but we don't anticipate that it's something that we can do just daily or weekly. Baseline testing, I know that our nursing coordinator has been on the call for quite a while. This is something that she investigated quite a bit for me with Dr. Spiesler, our district physician, and I don't know if you want to jump in at all on that one, Ms. Zarabera, but feel free to.
Sure. So the thing with COVID testing or PCR testing, which is testing for the virus, is it only tells you what the state is at that time, right? So you can test people today and they're negative, and tomorrow they can be positive. So, and because the window for showing symptoms is usually between 2 and 5 days, it's really meaningless if you test everybody today, but you're bringing them into school tomorrow or the next day, because it can change. So it would be an awful lot of effort, and I don't think it would really give you the information that you're looking for.
Thank you. We had some questions too about cohorting and when we would start mixing up students in things like before and after care. I really think that would be more of something we started to look at when we feel like we can shift to phase 2 and bring back some elements that would mix students together. We recognize that a before and after care program that brings kids from all different classes together does create a mixing scenario, and that's why that would be something that we would look at later on in the year. Contact tracing is part of the draft policy. I linked that to the presentation. A lot of that has to do with working with the local health department. Health check confirmations, we're looking at a software app that allows us to run reports to determine which students maybe have come to school that didn't do their daily health check screening. PPE for staff, masks, largely masks and face shields being supplied to staff in that regard. Perhaps some barriers where it's appropriate. Trying to keep the technology side of things working smoothly, making sure that we have enough internet, broadband, and technology for our staff. That's a big challenge. The broadband is something that we've done a really good job on, and we are positioned, if necessary, to expand the pipeline, if you will, that we're using. That issue doesn't seem to be nearly as complex as obtaining technology equipment. Again, supply chain pressure on things like Chromebooks, laptops, the fact that factories and production of things isn't what it might normally be because of the world pandemic that's affecting a lot of manufacturing as well. that may create situations where we want to refresh computers for teachers. We've budgeted for it, we've ordered for it, and things are taking a lot longer to get delivered. So that's a challenge for us. Wanting to make class more accessible for students, we have Zoom, we have the capacity to do Zoom, but we're interested in trying to allow kids to get into the classroom remotely with other technologies. Simple things like 360-degree cameras or cameras that have a microphone. We're ready to make purchases like that. Can we get the equipment? And the answer is often, no, we can't, or it's months delayed. So we are working on that equipment and looking at what other options might help us facilitate students that are at home trying to kind of Zoom their way into a classroom. This format provides us something. It would be nice if we could do more. With respect to the cohorting of students on A and B days, the intent is to keep families and siblings on the same schedule. I think that question came up again. How many students per class? We'll have a much better handle on that if we can get parents to make a selection going forward in the next 7 or 8 days. If we can decide how many kids are actually coming to school and how many are not, it'll be directly related to what the actual class sizes would be. But obviously our goal is to try to cut things down so that we're, less than half of our normal volume of students in a classroom. There was one question, Dr. Lazovic, about the what happens after 12:05 at Ridge High School. I think they were looking for some clarification on there was the travel/lunch time where students are in transit and the 90 minutes that follow the transit time.
As Ms. Hudak mentioned when she reiterated before, the school day, physical school day ends at the end of, I don't know if you want to bring that slide back up, but with the end of that fifth period. Students will be getting on buses or traveling home during that time. That's why part of the period that was highlighted was for travel. Plus, we want to ensure that our teachers do in fact get a break. And then after that period, that's when the virtual tutorial period would then open up. So the physical day, as Ms. Hudak also said for the middle school, is the first 5 periods. So they arrive before, they would leave at the end of that 5th period. Students would be traveling home, teachers would be able to have their necessary break, and then we could be, oh, there goes the screen. So that's WAMS. There's the high school. And so the in-school day would end with the end of that period 5 advisory period at 12:05, allowing for transportation as we work carefully between the tiers that exist in the district. And that gray period then from 12:05 to 12:50 would be an off period. And that leads into the pink period from 12:50 to 2:20 where the teachers will be working in that 60-minute block virtually, first and foremost with the students who were receiving instruction at home that day. So that there is that. I know that a couple of comments from the community members asked specifically if there would be potential contact every day. And this is that time, first and foremost, for the students who were not physically in school to have direct interaction with their specific teachers, beyond the other opportunities we can create for those at-home students during an at-home day to interact with teachers who are working tutorials and some of our other support measures. I mean, so the school day does run from that 7:35 to 12:05 in person, and then that 12:05 to 2:20 is broken down between the travel and the virtual.
Right. And that point that you raised about the live time with the students on Wednesdays in particular is kind of set up for all kids, A day, B day. Everyone's together with their teacher in a virtual environment in that case.
Correct. That's the safest way we can get an entire class together.
Right. Okay. I think the question came up similarly with respect to elementary level students. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, Ms. Hosany.
In regards to the virtual only students, they would be streaming in with their cohort for the class meeting each morning, and then as well as the specials. Then the virtual only kids would have a virtual only teacher, which would teach the main content areas. So they would be zooming in small groups with that virtual only teacher. And then in regards, I think there was a question about the science and social studies. We're still honestly working on that issue. Depends really on staffing. It depends on what our curriculum writing are doing. And we have to see what is the most feasible to how we can, whether it's better to integrate or whether it's basically to have standalone content area instruction. Because we're really focused on, we figure in elementary especially, the small group model is the most effective form of instruction. So we really want to, when those kids are present in the school, in the classroom, we want to make the best of those times. So zooming in live for the entire day is very difficult because, number one, like Mr. Markarian said, our classrooms are not set up. The teachers will be wearing masks. They don't necessarily have the mics on. So we're going to try to get them in as much as we can, but that's why we have those touch-ins with the teachers at the end of the day, and we have the virtual teacher will be collaborating with the homeroom teachers. So we're just trying to build in a balanced form of screen time versus off screen time, because we have, our young learners, we really don't necessarily want them online for 24 hours. So we really have to take that into mind and think about what is best for them. And, I know what we encountered in the spring in terms of those technology capabilities for families. We have many families with young children trying to juggle, the times that we have to have 3 kids on Zoom at the same time. We didn't have the technology, the capabilities, the Chromebooks. So even in that afternoon piece, there may be some flexibility. When you have a sibling, you can't necessarily all go on at 2:35. So, that's what a weekly agenda is going to do for you. Once the teacher gets to know you and the student and really the schedule of their families, then they can really ascertain what would be the best time to have these small group, touch bases. And then obviously we have different ways to communicate through the Google Classroom, through Seesaw. Seesaw is wonderful because we're going to see a lot more independence through the kindergarten and 1st and 2nd grade students. So you don't necessarily have to sit side by side. It's a nice help for the parents. We've seen a lot of success with that in other districts, so we will be adopting that approach. It's really one-stop shopping where you'll be getting one information through, some type of weekly agenda, whether it's through Parent Portal or through the Seesaw or Google Classroom. So all of your Zoom links will be there, all of the information that you need. If you need to step out into this pre-recorded video, if you need to go to a certain space, that will all be there for you. So we really tried to streamline that. We've learned a lot from the spring, and we're just ensuring that there is a combination of live versus, off the record, off live time. So. But it's not off the record, it's on the record. Like I said, we're building this plane as we're flying it. So there are things that are going to change. I was with my team this morning for about, 2 hours. And the more we dive into it, the more we say, what is feasible for teachers? Because we have to understand that they were working 24/7 in the spring. And now there's 2 different modalities. They have to worry about our kids that are in school, our kids that are out of school, the in school, at home, virtual. So there's a lot more preparation, a lot more planning. So we really have to make sure, plus their own personal lives. So we have to really talk about SEL for not only the students, but our staff as well.
Okay, thanks. So I know a question came up about the VOTEC schedule. I know we do have a decent number of part-time VOTEC students. Ms. Smith was kind enough to reach out to the VOTEC to try to get a handle on what kind of schedule they're starting to run. Unless you have any new information, Ms. Smith, my impression of that was basically that we need to try to coordinate with them on an individual basis with these students to see what we can do, because they're trying to juggle a response for all the different schools that are sending them students, and districts are doing different things. So it's going to be a lift, it's going to be a challenge, and I think we're going to end up trying to have to work with those students on an individual basis to see what kind of schedule we can create. Okay, that was pretty much what I wrote down. I know it's a challenge. We're all kind of making notes as the questions are coming at us, but my approach to this the last time was to get a transcript and then kind of go through it and produce a Q&A. So I'll do that process again. Madam President, it looks like she might have had to step away for a second.
Hey, Nick, one of the other, there was like also 2 or 3 questions related to how do we know when to move from phase 1, like in our plan, from phase 0 to phase 1 to 2 to 3? So
Sure. Right. So I think that we have to do that based on history. How are things bearing out in our own district and within the state of New Jersey? I know that we'll have to consult with our local health departments. We'll probably be looking for some guidance from the state. Do we get guidance that says, okay, now you're going to move from some in-person capacity to more or full? Will we get an executive order that directs that, or will it be a local decision, right? If it's a local decision, I think we're going to have to work locally with our health department and try to make a good decision about each item that we scale up. Some things may scale up before other things. I think we need to get some time behind us. I'm thinking at a minimum, probably in the ballpark of 60 days if we get a good start. 45 to 60 days, maybe somewhere in that time frame, we can start to think about how things are going and whether it's a good opportunity to move forward with less restrictions in some areas. Madam President?
So just one quick question. I think there was a question I had in my notes, well, a couple that are the same topic, about what PE and or specials might look like. I don't know if we're there yet. Is there anything that can be shared at this point, or is it just too early?
I'll speak for the secondary level. We are not there yet, as we've been talking about. In order for us to move forward with more succinct and detailed information, we needed a plan in place. Hopefully we will have that. We've had a lot of dialogue with the supervisors of each of those content areas. Dr. Lazovic and I on how we manage that. We do have shared personnel as well that are traveling between our buildings, which we're trying to work out. So that is right on the horizon, and we have, just like we have multiple plans for managing the students, we have multiple plans for ways in which we hope to provide our students with those elective opportunities, and of course the health and physical education opportunities, which are still a requirement by the state. So it's a plan in progress. I don't know if Ms. Fox wants to add anything to that, but
I would say it's our intention that we will be providing health and physical education, but it is a function of the class sizes, right, and our ability to socially distance properly with the facilities, and so that's why it would be kind of under consideration. But I know at the K-5 level, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Hosany, but I think we're talking about having one physical education class, because students have 2 per week. So one would be when they're in school, if we can properly organize that and socially distance them. And then the other one would be on their at-home day. That would be through live and or recorded instruction. So we are working on it, and we intend to provide it as long as we can.
Absolutely.
I can tell you too that in the draft that we have with respect to our plan, which is essentially the procedure associated with the policy for a return to instruction, we phrased it as we would have PE classes with accommodations in order to try to achieve the social distancing. Typical PE activities are not going to be something that we can start off with right away. We'd have to have modifications to the kinds of programs that we run in PE classes.
Yes, modifying the curriculum would be probably essential for at least the time being.
Thank you. Okay, so then our next item is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion, please? Mrs. Wooldridge and Mrs. Richmond. And a roll call, please, Mr. McLaughlin.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you. All right, so at this point, we're up to the Finance Committee report. Mr. Salmon?
Finance met on July 15th, last Wednesday. The first topic for discussion was our fall in-district transportation contracts. So right now, Mr. Ford, our outside transportation coordinator, is working on the updated routes. So adding new kindergartners, moving graduating 5th graders to WAMS and graduating 8th graders to Ridge routes. Del Val Regional High School is working on the routes with Mr. Ford. We're also going over the cleaning protocols for the busing. So the district will require that all buses be disinfected between runs. And Mr. McLaughlin is going to confirm that all drivers will be wearing face coverings during student transportation. The second item up was the ESY extended school year in-district transportation contracts. Out of 189 students that we anticipated for ESY this year, only 36 have requested transportation. So the range of students on each 24 passenger bus will be a low of 4 or 5 or about a max of 10. So there will be a good space for social distancing there. The next item up was the Ridge High School Middle Gym Floor Replacement Project. The project was started in April. It was, as previously reported, discovered that there was a significant amount of moisture in the concrete slab under the floor and remediation was required. However, the contractor retested the slab and now believes that a more significant mediation is required. So Mr. Perrin and Mr. McLaughlin spoke to the wood flooring manufacturer for the floor that we intend to install, and they propose a different remediation process. So Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. Perrin, and the contractor are working to determine what remediation process should be put in place so that the project can move forward. But the project's anticipated completion date of September will probably not happen at this point until the remediation is resolved. Then we'll identify a anticipated completion date. The next item, the fourth item up, was hygiene product installation in the district. So the automated paper towel dispensers are being installed right now by Aramark. The no-touch faucets, so we have 104 of them. This is half of our total order in, and Aramark began installing in June. So far, only Mount Prospect has been completed. Mr. McLaughlin is working with a plumber that can install an additional 50 faucets to complete 2 full buildings by the first week in August. The remaining 104 faucets were set to be delivered by July 15th, but that didn't happen. So we're working with the vendor to understand when the delivery will occur. So this is something that Mr. Markarian alluded to, that even though we placed orders a long time ago, sourcing components and some of these hygiene products is proving to be a bit challenging. For hand sanitizing stations in March, pump hand sanitizers were placed in all classrooms in the district. In April, we ordered battery-operated hand sanitizers, which were touchless and scheduled to be delivered in June, but now are delayed with no ETA from the vendor, unfortunately. UV lights were ordered to put in the air circulation systems above the nurse's office. They have been delivered, and more UV lights were ordered for the trainers' offices at Ridge High School. The next item was the transportation coordinator for in-district. Our district needs someone in our central office to work with our outside transportation team. Mr. McLaughlin is reviewing resumes, found 2 individuals that have good qualifications and will be invited in for interviews. The next item was Somerset County Ed Services, this spring 2020 out-of-district route contracts and spring 2020 in-district. So for the out-of-district route contracts, Somerset County Ed Services is speaking with vendors that were contracted to provide our out-of-district routes, and we're trying to resolve some contract issues there. For the spring 2020, we are talking with Somerset County Ed Services about resolving the issue related to the lack of transportation for the spring and how we can resolve that with them vis-a-vis the contract. Next item up was the food service RFP. So we got the bid results back. The district had reached the end of its 5-year contract with Aramark for food service, and pursuant to the law, we were prevented from renewing after 5 years. So we were required to go out to bid. Our bid package was for a 1-year contract with the option to renew and included language related to performance and quality of food service. Aramark was the only bidder. Aramark's bid kept its management fee, which is assessed on a meal equivalency basis, flat, and increased the guaranteed amount to the district by $50,000. Bill Gerichter from Advocate, which is the district's food service consultant, joined the meeting to explain why we did not receive bids from other vendors. This is very much like the busing situation we went through. Mr. Gerichter said vendors are not interested in adding new business at time because of the risk of school closure, and vendors were, specific to us, vendors were wary of bidding due to the Ridge High School cafeteria renovation and how that might impact food service. The eighth item was the Alyssa's Law grant. Alex Blinder, our IT director, and Hank Warner, the director of school security, are working with the Berners Township Police Department to get the certification that each building has a silent alarm that can dial directly to 911. This certification is necessary for the Alyssa's Law grant application. They did receive the certification on the 12th of July, 2 months after it was first requested. The ninth item was the Ridge Cafeteria Project. As part of the Ridge Cafeteria Project, plumbing contractors are examining sanitary lines that run outside of the cafeteria. It is anticipated that some of these plumbing lines will have to be repaired given the age, because they're about 58 years old. So Mr. McLaughlin is working with the contractor to discuss potential repair and replacement of these sanitary lines. The fiscal, and then that second to last item was the fiscal year end 2020 update. In light of the school closures in the spring, the district's ending budget saved some money on utility bills because the buildings were closed, but we also incurred some additional expenses that were related to hygiene products. So the final shakeout from the fiscal year 2020 won't be determined for a few months, also because we're waiting for state and extraordinary aid values, amounts from the state, which we don't know until the end of September. As far as the items on the agenda go right now for voting, 1 and 2 are standing items. 3 is professional development. 4 is a donation from the Mount Prospect PTO for the playground. Thank you to the Mount Prospect PTO. Number 5 is disposal of books and equipment. 6 is amending a contract with Aramark to add additional custodial staff. 7 and 8 are student services. 9 is a settlement. 10 to 23 are out of district placements. 24 is awarding the new food service contract to Aramark. 25 is approval of the submission of the Alyssa's Law grant application, and there is a 26th item that is the addendum. That is the acknowledgement that our district was notified that our anticipated categorical state aid for 2020-21 was reduced by $430,992. We are approving a resolution to restructure our budget to approve appropriation by transfer of that same amount from the unassigned general fund surplus to maintain our budgeted appropriations for the 2020-21 school year. That's it.
So I think I should have asked for a motion before Mr. Salmon went through. So if we could have a motion, please. Ms. McEwen and Mrs. Richmond. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Salmon? No questions, okay. Then Mr. McLaughlin, could we please have a roll call?
Of course. Can I just add 2 things before that? Because things are changing as fast as you know, we will all discuss. And the minutes were formalized yesterday, but today I did speak with the gym flooring contractor, and we agreed upon a resolution for the remediation piece of it. So that will help to move that project back on track. I'm hoping that if he can get the supply for the remediation materials that he needs, that he can get that, maybe get the project, including the installation of the flooring, done without any further disruption, maybe by the first week of September. So I just want to add that piece. And we also located a contractor this afternoon and issued an order for the touchless sanitizers, which as of yesterday, we were told that the existing order from several months ago with a different vendor had no ETA, even though it was originally supposed to have been delivered in late June and then told in mid-July. So we have received, we've issued another order with another vendor to replace that, who we have some optimism that they are telling us that they have that product in stock and that they can ship it to us. So we are trying to, redouble our efforts every time we run into some sort of impediment to trying to advance our projects or our supply needs. But I just wanted to add that for the board's comfort. Roll call, Ms. Beckman.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. The next item is Personnel Committee report. Could I have a motion, please? Mrs. Korn and Mrs. White. So the Personnel Committee met on July 17th, and I have to apologize because while I did complete the minutes, I neglected to forward them to Mr. Syed. So they have not yet been reviewed, but we do have, let me just check here.
19.
Pardon me?
Oh, 19 items.
Oh, it's 19 items?
Yeah, we have an addendum with 2 items.
Okay, all right, so we have 19 items. If Mr. McLaughlin, you could do a roll call, please.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you. So our next item is the Policy Committee report. Mrs. Korn? Oh, and I should ask for a motion once again, please. We do have some items. We have one item for second reading. So if I could have a motion, please. Ms. Schaefer and Mrs. Beckman, and then Mrs. Korn. Where are you?
Yep, I'm right here. I also have to tell Mr. McLaughlin that when I was doing the minutes, I have to abstain from July 24th because I wasn't there, right? July 24th. Or was it July 8th? I can't remember. One of them. Wasn't that? So thank you. Okay, so
I'm sorry, Mrs. Korn. We'll double check the record on that and we'll get it correct.
I think it might have been the 8th. I don't know.
I think it was the 8th, Jen.
I think it was the 8th.
I think it was the 8th.
I say yes
We'll
to
double check and make sure we get that right in the minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me just find my minutes here. So the policy committee met on July 13th, and we had a lot of discussion regarding the I guess the crisis response policies for what we were talking about, but everything's changed since then, really. So what you linked to the presentation today would be the most recent information regarding the policies for the reopening. And because there's a lot of policy decisions that have to be made. As far as what we're voting on today for first reading, there's it's the policy 1649. It's the Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and it's it includes the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act and the Emergency Paid Leave Act, and expands the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act. It provides employees with paid sick leave for specific reasons related to COVID-19. I think it's 12 weeks of up to 12 weeks, and it should apply from April 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Our other policy for first reading would be policy 0155.1, which is board member participation at board meetings using electronic devices, which is if a board member, because of if a board member can't make it to the meeting, if we have live meetings, they can't make it to the meeting for an unavoidable conflict of reason, and it's mostly for health reasons, I would think, or a health concern, or just a serious reason, that because we have the communications, we can do it. We can, the board member could join the live meeting virtually. And there's a couple of caveats, or you know, they have to request to be pre-approved. They have to be submitted to the board president, all the requests 48 hours in advance of the meeting. I mean, except unless it's a you know, unanticipated emergency that can't be helped. And if it's a good cause, you're permitted to remote participation and approve the request. The board president will approve the request for your remote participation in the meeting, and the board will be notified, and the business administrative board secretary will be notified. It also would limit the number of times you would be able to do this, and how many people at once can be, how many board members at once can be remoting into a live meeting. Did I explain it correctly, I think? And then for second reading, we have the policy and regulation 9200, which is our cooperation between parents and school. And that was, we had a first reading of that already, and that's regarding acceptable conduct and speech during communication between staff and parents. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one comment about the policy about remote attendance at board meetings. I would like to change the language to say like extenuating circumstances. I know it says that they need approval, but I wouldn't want to put the board president in the position of, you know, making decisions about what is appropriate or not. And I think it has the word travel in there, and I don't think
No, I think they changed it. They changed it
already. Okay.
So it says, I'll read it. Want me to read it?
Just that one line.
It says, circumstances may arise that prevent a member from attending a meeting, such as health concerns or a serious unavoidable conflict.
Okay.
That's what it says.
Okay.
And then it says, given recent advances in communication technology, it'll be permitted if that's, you know, if it follows those, it falls into those guidelines.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
I obviously didn't read the latest one. Thanks.
That's right. That's why I switched back and forth. It's all over the place. Yeah.
Other questions? Mrs. Wooldridge.
Yeah, hi. So I'm a little unclear about this policy as far as what's going on. Like, for example, it didn't address the fact that we have a pandemic going at all. Is it? It seems sort of independent of that. Does it assume that the board, it's safe and that the board is back to having in-person meetings? I guess I'm a little unclear on this.
Yeah. I don't think it's a pandemic policy. I think it's just a general policy since the technology available, and if it wasn't, and it has to be an emergency. But I don't think it's just because of the pandemic. I think it's just a general policy. That's my impression anyway.
Well, even though we are all experiencing what it is to be in the pandemic and we're all virtual, it seems like it's sort of implied that it's not the pandemic.
It's, yeah, I mean, when we talked about this, it was for not the pandemic. So meaning that if we were in a mode of it being the norm to get back to meeting in person, but somebody has an extenuating circumstance. And as I read the policy again, it looked like it was referring to, and hopefully we're all looking at the same one in the policy committee folder. You know, it describes an event where a board member has a medical condition that prohibits their attendance at a board meeting, or a commitment that requires the board member to be out of state during a board during a board meeting. So, you know, if you want to see firmer language to try to describe maybe more detailed situations, to help the board president make a determination as to whether or not it would be reasonable, we could certainly have more discussion about that. But the concept of the policy was normal meetings are occurring in person.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an extreme, and I think the concept is an extreme situation because you're looking for people to be at board meetings. But there are sometimes extreme situations that might be completely out of their control. And, you know, we're not talking about business travel or things like that, but I could understand that, you know, it does kind of put a lot on the board president. So if the board wants us to revisit this in policy committee and try to give the board president maybe some cleaner parameters about making the decision, I see no reason why we couldn't do that if that's the pleasure of the board.
There was some indication in the minutes that there might be some tweaks made to it, at least in the minutes that I saw. I wonder, I don't know if that was.
Yeah, I thought they were already made, right? In the board.
I guess I was just a little unclear on some of the details here.
Well, like I said, it's not a problem if you want us to revisit the language and show you something that is tighter. That's fine. Just let me know. We'll be happy to work with the policy committee to do that.
I mean, Linda and I were around when the board debated this whole idea in the past. And I think, you know, the concern why we didn't have a policy was people might, you know, pressure the board to allow them to do it all the time because they're traveling all the time or whatever. And we didn't really want to get into that. I think this says it's more for extenuating circumstances. And there's also like, I think there's also something that if a board member doesn't show up to a number of public meetings in a row, they can be removed from the board. So I think we're protected if someone just like refuses to come and wants to call in all the time. They can't just do that. You know what I mean? This would not be something someone could just decide they're going to do it all the time.
Well, I think there's definite limits to
concern about that, you know?
Okay, that's helpful, thanks.
I think that's why we were purposely vague with the idea that the president would have some leeway to make some of those decisions, that we didn't want somebody to, you know, move 6 months to Florida or something, you know, and
Mr. Salmon.
Yeah, I just would double check the policy in the folder because it's referring to medical conditions and out of state travel. So I thought you said there was something about extenuating circumstances in there, and I don't see that in the folder or in the minutes.
I'm looking in the folder in the board of ed meeting folder. The policy is in, and that's where it says.
Okay. So it's not in the policy committee.
No, it's in the board.
The one that's associated.
The one that's in the board of ed meeting folder for the July 23rd. That's the most recent one I'm thinking.
Can I make a suggestion that perhaps we just refer this back to policy for a little refinement? We have quite a few public comments still coming in, and we have several other items to get to on the agenda, and it seems like there's enough question here to warrant another discussion. And I don't think we're in an emergency situation with this particular policy, since right now we're all sitting here.
Yeah.
So if is that amenable to everybody? Mm-hmm. I'm getting head nods and some thumbs up. So, okay. Thank you, Mrs. Corn.
Okay.
So if everyone's in agreement, you can just remove item 2. I'm sorry. It's the first item under item 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Questions on item 2? So are we ready for a roll call? Okay, I see nodding heads. Mr. McLaughlin?
Ms. Beckman?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you. Our next item is the Curriculum Committee report. Mrs. Richmond.
Sorry. Curriculum met yesterday, and I didn't have a chance to do the minutes, but I just wanted to say we went over this presentation, and the administrative team spent 2 hours answering all of the committee's questions and concerns, many of which the public also wrote in about, but many other things as well. So I don't want the public to, I want the public to know that we had a lot of the same questions that they have had, but they were just answered in our committee meeting and tonight also. But that, I mean, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Richmond. And then the next item is the Wellness Committee report.
This seems so long ago, we discussed all this, but Wellness met on June 18th, and we discussed a very interesting article called "When School Reopens, the Doors Must Open Equally to All." And the article describes children's reactions to natural disasters and explains that they can result in emotional disturbances. Systemic disparities also play a part in how children cope with these experiences. And the pandemic has turned everyone's world upside down, and so we must be prepared to address this upon return to school. There's a lot that has gone on in homes that we're aware of, as many families have reached out to counselors. Some are grieving and others are communicating how their children are doing, but there's just much that we do not know. There have been many conversations about the logistics of the return to instruction, and now conversation is turning to how the emotional impact of COVID-19 will be addressed. Much of the summer projects are related to what staff and parents need to know and what might children be experiencing. Ms. Smith also mentioned much of what we discussed in terms of summer projects. At WAMS and Ridge both are involved with the Grief Sensitive School Initiative, which is through a grant with New York Life. Staff went through training last summer, and as a result, the district has been provided with additional material to utilize with students. And the summer SACs at Ridge are working on grief-sensitive and trauma-informed curriculum writing. There will be a staff college offering from middle school counselors and SACs on the impacts of COVID-19 trauma on children and how teachers can be informed and prepared for these impacts. Another staff college course from high school SACs will be offered on the Nurtured Heart approach, which is a methodology and ways to converse with kids for positive results. The Ridge SACs will engage in curriculum writing for trauma-informed and grief-sensitive work to prepare for this fall. All school counselors and SACs across the district will also be engaged in a 6-hour staff college course with a variety of trainings, webinars, readings to prepare for virtual counseling and the return to instruction this fall. Included in this material is information about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, grief trauma, and virtual school counseling. The initiative, including ACEs, looks at what does survival in school look like, what does life look like in the classrooms or virtually. It explores multitudes of ways that feelings can manifest. For example, what is happening in a child's inner world and how teachers, counselors help them to feel safe is covered. There's much contact on flight, fight, and submit, and how children respond to each. And they're looking into ways to share this information with teaching staff and share resources that are developmentally appropriate. All levels are working on the idea that the school closure in many ways is trauma-based, as the article we discussed previously states. And this will help teachers as well, as they have been affected by the disruption in person teaching. School counselors will also be focusing on summer projects too, such as scheduling. Additionally, at Ridge, counselors will be spending 1 week each on writing letters of recommendations for seniors. There had been a big push to get the letters out in the past, and it will be very helpful for students who are ready to begin submitting college applications in August. The hope is that each guidance counselor is able to complete 25% of their letters in the week they're working. In addition, there will be master schedule days and time to prepare fall materials, and getting the most relevant and up-to-date college information gathered will be undertaken. There are still so many unknowns, so much preparation for college representatives to hold virtual information sessions will be scheduled in lieu of in-person events. Similarly, virtual college fairs are being planned, and lastly, matriculation lists are being completed. It seems as if we're still on trend with the students committing to 2- and 4-year colleges, and geographical implications as a result of the virus will be explored, as kids may have chosen to remain closer to home as a result. Ms. Fox and Ms. Smith are also spending 1 to 2 days working on the career education program evaluation, and there will be a committee with K-12 staff. They will look at what the current state of the state is and what are we doing. At a previous meeting, we also stated that this is a district goal, and so discussions will take place during the summer and continue during the school year. Other program evaluations have been postponed to next summer. An update was provided on youth mental health first aid grant at Ridge, and Ms. Fox has submitted the grant application that's necessary to take the next step. Currently, we were waiting on a response to see if we are an approved site. It will be tremendously important for staff to get training for this program. It mentioned previously at another meeting, the pilot program will be for the teen version, which is a minimum age of 10th grade. The teen version is very different from the counselor version. It stresses while you are not a counselor, you can still help a friend utilizing the acknowledge, care, tell, or the act protocol. We do not have a summer meeting scheduled at this time, but as more information becomes available about return to school, we may need to schedule one. Do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions. Our next agenda item is liaison committee reports. Does anyone have any? Ms. Korn.
I have a report, but since we're not really meeting with the municipal alliance, I'm getting some emails, and I wanted to let everyone know that the municipal alliance has partnered up with the Burns Township Parks and Rec, and they're doing a 50K challenge, the summer 50K challenge, and you can join the Burns Township Parks and Rec for the challenge to benefit the Burns Township Municipal Alliance Against Substance Abuse. And you choose how to complete the 31-mile challenge. You can do it anytime, any place, any activity. It's $20 per participant, all ages, registered by August 14th. And $15 of every registration will directly benefit the Municipal Alliance, which does great work. And you can log your activities and then in a worksheet, and then you submit by September 8th. It's to help get people moving and just to support the Municipal Alliance. It says medals will be awarded to all finishers. Woo-hoo. And so, and you can go on to the details are online at vermontsystems.com. It's web1.vermontsystems.com, and then it's NJ Burns Township in there, but you can probably find it if you search, because it's a long website. I don't want to read the whole thing, but it sounds like something fun if people are looking for a excuse to support the Municipal Alliance and to get moving and get in shape and get outside.
Thank you, Mrs. Korn. Okay, with that, we are up to public comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Fox.
Okay. There are some comments that came in on agenda items after the first set of comments, but then there are some non-agenda items as well. So my name is Michelle Yang. My address is 6 Sentinel Drive. I would like to state my concern about the book American Born Chinese. According to the rating from Amazon and the article High Anxiety in New York Times on May 13, 2007, for young readers, this book should only be read under the careful supervision of teachers or parents. My son borrowed this book from the school library when he was in elementary school without letting me know, and there was no supervision from any teachers. He read this book and had a really bad impression of this book. I did not know this until our community had a discussion about this book recently. My son told me this book has a lot of scary illustrations of the Chinese people and will teach kids how to mock and bully Asian Americans. My son will be an 8th grader next school year, and he is really nervous that this book will be in his curriculum. We heard that a lot of students in the past had the same feeling about this book, and some of them did get mocked or bullied from the behavior learned from this book. In this situation, they got little mental support or real help from school and teachers, and most of them kept silent, which made us even more concerned about this book. Our school district has a zero tolerance on bullying and declared we will include more anti-racist and inclusive curriculums from now on. I am really sorry to hear there are evidence we did have students that had a bad experience in the past and got little help from school at a young age. According to this, American-born Chinese does not fit into our curriculum and should be also removed from elementary and middle school libraries. I hope our school district can listen to our students and take our students' untold sad story caused by this book in our community seriously. Also, the real Asian American history in U.S., such as we are the majority of the Central Pacific workforce that built out the Transcontinental Railroad east from California in Golden Spike, has been long missing in our country's school curriculum. We hope our school district can introduce books about that, and the books will introduce true value of Asian American family instead of a book that may teach kids how to exclude, mock, and bully Asian Americans. I would highly recommend the book Fresh Off the Boat. This book has been highly liked and received a lot of awards. It has been made into an ABC TV show, and it gets a lot of positive ratings. Again, I support that this book should be taken off from curriculum in elementary and middle school library. Wen Ni 138 Patriot Hill Drive. I am writing to support the removal of a book, American Born Chinese, from the reading list of our school district. Even though the author wanted to inspire readers by using a satire approach, it actually inadvertently conveys a negative message that many people think Asian Americans are nasty, rude, ignorant, and annoying in and out. After reading several pages, I think the book is very disturbing, demeaning, outdated, and confusing, especially in this sensitive moment when everyone wants to treat each other with respect and empathy. When COVID-19 just started to spread in the US, my daughter had an experience at school that another classmate called her names and associated her with the coronavirus for no reason. I reported the incident and received tremendous support from our school and district. I believe we all learned a lesson how to deal with and prevent similar situations going forward. Middle school is a critical stage in shaping a child's future development. I want all of the kids to have an opportunity to set up the right values and principles about the world by living in an appropriate way. Teenagers are eager to learn independently, but in the meantime, they are also immature and easily influenced by peers, books, news, media, and current events. With everything going on these days, we need to be more sensitive and caring and work harder to help our teenagers in understanding the world and finding the best things out of human nature. Thus, I believe the school district should reevaluate this book and remove it from the list for students to learn in our district. Just FYI, this book was removed right away after some parents shared their disagreement at the Pingree School. Thank you so much for reading my comments and for your consideration. Together we will be strong and we will build a better future, a better world for our kids, our community, and our country. Sorry. Kiran Narsu, 37 Sentinel Drive. What is the RHS procedure for blended model students who are ill? Can they leverage virtual model until they are well enough to return? Shirley Cunningham, 79 Meeker Road. What will the remote instruction days look like when the other cohort is in school? Will there be a live feed or assigned lessons? Nessa Rossi, 14 Culberson Road. If a student has instructional support for a specific subject in school, does that make them a resource room student? Stacy Irvine, 42 Mount Airy Road. What will PE look like at RHS? How will it differ in the blended versus the virtual models? And at what point will option 2 return? Also, the social emotional task force mentioned it consists of staff from many levels. Why aren't parents and students being included on this task force? Will the ESS staff at Ridge be included in these discussions? Scott Tyndale, 28 Georgetown Court. We ask the board to consider and provide responses to any questions below that have not already been asked and or addressed tonight. With more than half the states currently under quarantine restrictions when coming back to New Jersey, how will the school monitor adherence to this? How will school better be enforcing policies around returning to school after being sick? What will the district's plan be for outbreaks? What number of cases, either community-wide or school community-wide, will prompt closure? Will an outbreak in one school require a district-wide shutdown? What tolerances will be allowed for student in school, i.e. what will get a child removed from class? 1 cough, 2 coughs, etc. Can you better describe the amount of interaction all virtual students will have with their in-school classmates and teachers? Lastly, we truly appreciate how difficult this planning and decision-making must be. There will never be a solution that appeals to everyone and every circumstance 100%. As a closing thought, we highly recommend any online planning be done with consultation with Dave Yastrzemski and his forensics team and any other teacher-led summer camp that has been successful. This camp should serve as a model to how a virtual school can be run effectively and in a way to engage the students. Pam Malari, 79 Fieldstone Drive. For the 100% virtual option for 6th through 12th grade, will live or synchronous instruction be provided? Will live connection between these students and teachers only be through the check-ins after the lunch period? Mimi Miller, 60 Canterbury Way. What suggestions does the board have regarding childcare for working parents? This hybrid educational plan is prohibitive for working parents. Please remember, parents contribute to society and the economy and could not possibly do so when their children go to school for a mere 10 hours per week. Peter Jin, 36 Dickinson Road. How will the exams, especially for those end of semester tests, to be administered for 100% virtual students? Dawn Simone, 4 High Hill Court. 1, I'm still unclear what the middle and high school students would be doing on the days they're not in school. Are they watching what is going on in class? Are they doing independent learning, or are these homework days? 2, do we have a plan for what happens if when someone is confirmed with COVID? What is it? Julia Zlotsky Gogi, 76 Liberty Corner Road. Please clarify how specials will be run. I see that the art teacher will only have 5 minutes in between classes at LCS. How will she be able to disinfect all her art mediums within 5 minutes, 6 times a day? She will be seeing over 600 students a week. If there was an outbreak, would every single student need to quarantine and be tested if they saw their specials teacher? Very concerned about specials breaking down the safety of cohorts. It would be preferential to focus schoolwork on core subjects only at this time. Thank you. Thanks so much for any help you can provide. Malik Shah, 6 Raritan Place. Will virtual students be assigned a classroom and a teacher? Will they provide the same level of education? How will they be given tests and how will they be graded? Brendan O'Connor, 11 Forbes Court. Thank you for an impressive plan. I am so grateful to all of you. How will you ensure that the 100% virtual education will be equivalent to the blended model in terms of quality and rigor? Is this a goal? Will it be possible? Jason Haviland, 153 Canterbury Way. 1. If your child is feeling under the weather, can she tap into a virtual day, even if it is their in-person day? 2. Is there an opportunity to change the model you decide if health or family circumstances change? 3. I haven't seen any mention of athletics. Is this something the board can decide, or is it up to the state governing body? Bonnie Birkin, 5 Concord Lane. Thank you for taking the time to survey the community and develop the plans. This is a huge undertaking, and I know that you are all working tirelessly to create a plan that works for everyone. 1, during the spring, when we were all thrown into this without any preparation, most of my elementary school children's lessons were recorded, and much of their work, once completed, didn't need to be submitted to their teachers. Could you speak more about lesson delivery for the 100% virtual option? Would lessons be live or recorded? Would all students use Seesaw or Google Classroom to submit work to teachers and receive feedback? Will the schedule be synchronous for these 100% virtual students? Will these students be watching live stream classes and specials? 2, I'm very pleased to hear that schools are requiring masks for students and staff. For the hybrid model, how will students eat snack? Wouldn't it be similar to lunch where students would need to remove masks? Is it possible for students to eat snack outside when the weather permits? Have you considered curricular changes for music, where children sing and expel more virus? Or gym, where students typically play closer together? Thank you for all of your hard work. Guru Ramamurthy from 7 Gordon Place. The update this evening is truly appreciated and well thought through. Are our choices between virtual or hybrid learning valid for the entire academic year? Joanne Stream, 396 White Neck Road. In the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned going from phase 1 to 2, and that would be determined in time after school resumes. Please explain the exact criteria you will use for determining when you will go from one phase to another and how often this will be evaluated. This should be determined up front so that the district can be nimble based on the changing nature of this epidemic. Thank you. Tim Mattiola, 34 Decker Street. At Ridge, the block set aside for advisory time and the afternoon virtual check-in sessions do not take into account students who attend the afternoon sessions at Somerset County VOTEC, as they are not available during those times. This puts them at a disadvantage, having less time to meet with teachers and advisors. Have you been in contact with VOTEC? No, I read that one. I read that one. Pamela Ballister. I think I read that one. Ramya Ramamurthy, 23 Raleigh Court. Question, is there a difference in grading scales for virtual versus in-person students? For last year, we had a different one for the last trimester versus the usual grading. What are the plans for next year? Truly, or thanks for the hard work, truly appreciate it. Dawn Simone, 4 High Hill Court. I'm still unclear what the middle and high school students would be doing on the days they are not in school. Are they watching what is going on in class? Are they doing independent learning, or are these homework days? 2, do we have a plan for what happens if when someone is confirmed with COVID-19? What is it? I may have read that one. Ripa Carta, 58 Independence Drive. Why can't Group A students learn via live virtual classes when Group B is in session and vice versa? Also, since we are in a new learning situation for the fall, is it possible for teachers to be available until 4 p.m. rather than 2:20 or 2:30? My name is Ji Huang and my address is 15 Battalion Drive. I have concerns regarding a book, American Born Chinese, which is currently on the 8th grade curriculum. It appears that this book has bad illustration about Chinese people and had caused bullies to Chinese kids in school. My daughter will be in 8th grade in the fall and I don't want any bully to happen to her. I support that this book should be taken off from the curriculum of the elementary and middle schools in our district. Thank you. Manasa Dahia, 5 Watchung Drive. Good evening all. Thank you to each of you for all the hard work, understanding, and patience you have given to provide families with flexible learning options. In regard to WAMs in school session, has there been any thought given to having the students stay in one classroom the entire time and have teachers rotate between each period? Many countries outside of the US run schools this way. This may be a good idea to keep the transmission bubble to a single classroom. Also, many families have kids in different schools, so please offer staggered time to allow ample time to drop, pick up schools from different locations in town. Thank you again for going the extra mile and trying to make the best lemonade possible during this pandemic. Heather Watson Kramer, 84 Liberty Corner Road. Dear Mr. Markarian and Board of Education members, thank you very much for all of your hard work on these plans. I know this is an impossible task and that you will not be able to please everyone. I have a few questions. 1, what is the plan for PE at William Annan and Ridge? 2, you mentioned that electives are TBD. Please explain. Half of my senior schedule is technically considered electives. 2 art periods, music, psychology, sociology, etc. 3, would clubs be allowed to meet virtually? Mike Sinofsky, 9 Wildwood Drive. Please do not ignore the questions about virtual learning being live. Why can we have live instruction on virtual days? Beth, no address, sorry. Terry Laird, 20 Lurline Drive. I appreciate all you have done in working on such a difficult task. Children are resilient, and even if things are not optimal, they will still get through this and come out the other side with other life lessons learned as well. I would like to express my concern on the compliance of the children of all ages in the wearing of masks. For local sports this summer, the wearing of masks is required to and from the fields, and after just a week, I watched the teenagers leave the field in groups with not a single mask on, even though I am certain the coaches tell them to put them on before leaving. I am wondering if there would be any disciplinary actions for those who will not wear masks, because the not wearing of masks is more harmful to other students and teachers than to themselves. If they wish to put themselves at risk, that's one thing, and would be their own parents' issue to deal with. But this pandemic is where they put others at risk, so how will the wearing of masks be enforced? Currently, it is required by state mandate that all wear masks while indoors and on transportation. Thank you for all the hard work that has been put into this. Valerie Chen, 35 Sentinel Drive. On behalf of those who've had negative experiences during the American-born Chinese curriculum in 8th grade, I am advocating for the following action items. Remove American-born Chinese from elementary school and middle school libraries. Remove American-born Chinese from the 8th grade English curriculum. William Annan's middle school mission statement expresses a commitment to, quote, to promote a safe and supportive environment to ensure that our students can advance towards their future as knowledgeable, open-minded, responsible, and compassionate individuals who can create positive changes in our world. Quote. American-born Chinese in the curriculum is a clumsy and careless attempt at exploring coming of age and Asian American identity. The parroting of racial stereotypes given permission to be objects of ridicule creates an environment far from creating a safe and supportive environment. So far, the response from the administration on this issue has been disappointing. Administrators claim that these are the first complaints they have received regarding American-born Chinese, inciting racist, bullying, and fostering an unsafe environment for Asian American students. In 2016, as an 8th grader myself, I asked my teacher to expand on the concept of satire in class, as I and other classmates were uncomfortable with the jeering, racist tropes by our non-Asian peers, racial tropes that have been brushed off as microaggressions rather than blatant racism by administration. I was informed by my teacher that this was, quote, not her responsibility, and I was silenced at the age of 13. My request for change stopped in its tracks before any department head could hear about it. So from alumni as far back as 2014 to the just recently graduated class of 2020, I have collected the unheard stories of the American-born Chinese unit. This book is all kinds of uncomfortable and literally, I feel like, only made the already racist kids more racist. For example, a white kid asked me if I eat dogs because of reading it in class. I don't think I got anything out of reading it other than learning new stereotypes and new ways for Asian kids to be made fun of. Class of 2014. Quote, trying to teach ABC to a bunch of 8th graders is a disaster at worst and naive at best. As an Asian American student, I remember dreading going into English class when the novel was being taught. I felt extremely awkward and uncomfortable. If the purpose of the novel is to teach about racism and prejudice, the novel and the way it is taught at WAMS has failed spectacularly. The graphical and verbal representations of Asians in the novel, and Chinky in particular, became sources of ridicule and racist jokes. I think the novel is better fit for a more mature setting, like a college class/seminar, and certainly not for an 8th grade English class of 2014. Quote, as someone who graduated from WAMS 10 years ago, the mention of American-born Chinese evokes only uncomfortable memories of my 8th grade English class. I remember going to class and trying to minimize my participation while reading ABC in order to draw less attention to myself as a Chinese American. As my classmates laughed at the racist tropes in the book and chanted the rhyme said by Chinky.
Excuse me, that comment's going for 3 minutes then.
Okay. Want me to move on? There's one more. Jeff Kramer, 84 Liberty Corner Road, Bar Hills. So many of our students have been locked out of taking the ACT and SAT this spring and summer. Has there been any thought to offering these tests during the school week, as is done in many other school districts? That was the last one.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Mr. Markarian, I don't know if I know there were some repeat questions included in there from earlier, but if there are any that you'd like to try to address, maybe you'd like to do that now?
Sure.
Or of course, anyone else.
Sure. So I just trying to run down my notes. There are no exact criteria that have been developed yet in terms of moving from phase 1 to phase 2. The question of being remote or live during off times, I know that question came up quite a bit, and I think it's going to vary a lot by the teacher and also by the level. I know that the expectation on the 612 level that we've described involves the students that are home being connected to the classes because those are their periods 3 times a week. So you have to be connected to what your class is doing pursuant to the instructions that the teacher's giving, and that may well be zooming in, quote unquote, live, which is the same question that has come up with respect to some of the questions around being 100% virtual. Will you be live with your teacher? Yes, you will. You'll have to be, because you're 100% virtual. A lot of your time is going to have to be zooming into classrooms to get the content. The challenge, of course, is going to be in situations where the teacher has students in front of them and students that are zooming in. That's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a difficult challenge. Is it going to be perfect? It's not going to be perfect. Do they have great technology in that classroom that makes what's happening in that room 100% visible and absorbable by the person that's sitting at home. No, it's not going to be perfect. Are they going to do the best they can? Yes, but it's not a perfect scenario just because you're able to zoom into somebody's classroom.
Can I just add to that a little bit?
Yes.
So certainly what you're speaking about at the 6-12 level is been our discussion. And at the K-5 level, because of the difficulty you just described and the age of the students, the goal and what we're striving for is to create opportunities for the students on their at-home day, their remote day, to be live with their class during class meetings so they connect with their class, to attend a special, and potentially some of their support classes for students who will get support. And then we're looking at science and social studies being delivered on the at-home day remotely, if we can manage that. Because for a few reasons, like it would provide more time on the in-school day for the small group instruction in reading, writing, and mathematics, which would be where we would want to focus our in-school time when the teacher can work directly with the student. So the goals at the K-5 level are a little different, but they are to connect the students to the class, to give them some live opportunities, but not to be streaming into the classroom for the entire length of the day, rather than to give them opportunities to connect. And one of the questions was about Seesaw and Google Classroom. Mm-hmm. So the K-2 students and teachers will be using Seesaw, and some people have experience with that as a learning management system that is interactive and does provide ways for the students at that young age to be more independent, not totally independent, but more independent. And then grades 3 through 5 will be using Google Classroom as their platform. So that would be where information is communicated, shared in a unified way with links and assignments, and also where students can submit work. So it will be more organized in that way than it was in the spring, and it will also bring those students like into the classroom in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Fox, what about the 100% virtual students? Because someone asked me the question. For the younger students, the K through 5 or K through 2, how many minutes of actual like Zoom time would they be getting, or is that not really mapped out yet?
So in the sense that we don't know the staffing or the students who are looking and will be, staff who are approved to be working remotely, and then students who request that option, has to happen before we can really put those things together. But our intention is for the minutes of instruction to be equitable between those two groups of students. The delivery of it might vary, and at the K-5 level, we might be in a better position to have a virtual teacher work with a group of particularly, for example, a grade 1 remote virtual only students. Right. But like I want to emphasize, we don't know that until we see the numbers.
Right. So the question came up about snack time and eating outside. Definitely we're trying to avoid the need for kids to have to take off masks in settings that are not ideal or appropriate. So we would want to look for opportunities to ideally give kids a mask break outside at the same time that they're having their snack. The two kind of go hand in hand. You get a break from wearing your mask and you get your snack. So ideally we would try to achieve that wherever possible. The question came up about accessing virtual if you're homesick. We would like to make that an option. We're not exactly sure how that would happen yet, but we do think that that is something that we would be able to work out. This question about virtual or hybrid, would you be signing up for the whole year? We talked about that a little bit earlier, trying to have appropriate times to make transitions, perhaps at trimesters at the elementary level, at the semester mark for the secondary level. So in that case, no, that would not be the whole year. Is instructional support the same thing as resource room? Not typically. In our definitions, instructional support is typically math support or language arts support. That's not typically equivalent to resource room. Typically, resource room is associated with students that have IEPs, and instructional support is not typically. I don't know if you want to jump in on that, Jean, but I think that's our
Yeah,
terminology.
instructional support is a gen ed initiative. Those are just struggling students before they have an IEP or before they're evaluated. Resource room are for students with disabilities that do have an IEP.
Right. The question came up about moving teachers instead of students. That's easier to accomplish at the elementary level. I don't think it's going to be very realistic for us at middle school and high school, where our students are mixed together. When would option 2 return? That kind of goes along with exact criteria for when we can move from one phase to the next. We'll have to wait and see. Mask enforcement is definitely going to be a challenge. We recognize that. Will students be disciplined? I don't think it's our goal to look around and say, you know, we're not out to punish kids. We want to treat them with respect and train them to wear their mask. That would be the first effort, to train the students to wear the mask. If a consistent effort to do that happens and students cannot comply, might we take progressive measures that could result in a student not being able to participate in in-person instruction? Ultimately, I could see that being a possibility. Certainly, I hope that an educational approach and teaching the students how to endure wearing a mask, that would be the starting direction, I think, for all of us. And truthfully, all of us being the nation, the community, teaching our kids to be able to tolerate masks. That's something that everybody can work on starting now. ESS will still be working with us. We have a contract with them. I think Ms. Fox addressed this issue a little bit. The goal of trying to keep virtual providing a quality product of instruction. Will it be exactly equivalent? We're trying to make equal access for the students to the instruction. Is it going to look exactly the same K-12? No, I don't think so. Will it be exactly the same experience if you're 100% virtual to being 50-50 in person? It's not going to be exactly the same. We have to fill in some of the blanks on how some of these details will flow. I know there were questions about assessment and academic integrity. I don't envision students being graded on a different scale just because they are 100% virtual or they are doing the 50-50 in person and remote. ACT and SAT came up. I don't know if you can speak to that at all, Ms. Smith, if there's anything going on in that area that you've been tracking. I haven't seen anything new of late. Outbreaks, closures, we would work with the local health department on making those decisions. Thank you for the kudos to Mr. Yevstromsky. He is awesome, and I'm sure we'll be interested in working with him. And Somerset County VOTEC came up again. I think we're going to have to look at that on an individual student basis. It's you know, it presents a challenge when schedules don't match up, and I can see there are going to be problems in that area.
You want me to speak about the American born Chinese?
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to speak about that. We have received some communications late spring. Mr. Hunter did, and he and I worked together to look at that issue and respond. And I just want you to know that the response was that we would certainly take a look at the issue. The response was also to share the goal and the objective of the course from the perspective of the teachers, and the perspective that we really hadn't heard complaints brought to our level of attention in the past. But we do take it seriously, and we do continue to look at it. He's going to continue to have discussions with his teachers. And certainly it coincides, right, with the students asking us to take a look at an anti-racist curriculum initiative. And so, in fact, I did speak to those students about that very issue because it raises some interesting things for us to think about with regard to what they're asking us to look at. So I do take this very seriously, and we are considering to think about it. And so I appreciate the concerns, shared again tonight, but we are aware of them and we will keep working on it.
That's all I had in my notes. Thank you.
Nick, somebody asked about sports. I think we touched
Right.
on that before.
We did.
But
We touched on that. We're gonna look to the NJSIAA. Obviously, if our local board felt like something they wanted to move forward with wasn't something that we wanted to move forward with, we would have a conversation about it.
And I also just point something out. I don't know who asked it, but somebody brought something up about feedback from students. And I'm not sure everybody is aware that we have something now called the Bernards Township Council, Advisory Council, and it is made up of not only administrators from every building, teachers from every building, parents from every building, but students from Ridge. And we've had a number of meetings since the spring and the summer, and we've gotten very well-spoken questions asked and responses shared from Ridge students about their needs, what they liked, what they didn't like. So student feedback has very much been a part of this plan, and they have been a very valued stakeholder in putting this together.
Yeah, and I think sorry, got the echo there. Go ahead, Ms. Gray, I apologize.
I was just going to say, if I could piggyback on that and just say, as the parent of a just graduated senior, I found that the representatives to the council, the communication council, were doing a good job of surveying their peers through social media, their devices, to get input when they knew that they would be coming to the communications council for discussion on whatever items might have been on that agenda. So are we ready? Mr. Markarian, I thought you were going to say something. I didn't mean for that awkward pause to sit there.
No, I
Is
think
Nick
we're
frozen?
I think I got through my notes. Thank you.
Okay, so then with that, we are up to board forum. So board members, thoughts, questions, concerns? Ms. Schaefer?
You guys feel like you have enough information from us to move forward? I mean, I really think that this plan is as comprehensive and as good as anything that anybody else is going to present or have in any other district. And we want you to have enough time to move forward with the rest of the nitty-gritty planning. I mean, is that something we can do this tonight?
That would be great if you're feeling comfortable to do that. We'd love that.
Ms. Corrin?
I agree with Suzanne. I think it seems like we have to take the next step now because you've done so much work putting this whole together. So I think we just have to go forward with it and put all those little details together everyone's asking about, and then hope that Murphy doesn't shoot us out of the water, with his next meeting.
Yeah, and I want to sincerely understand that, there are details. We know there are details. We need a good basis to start filling in the blanks, and then we can communicate more as we go along.
Mr. Salmon?
Yeah, I'm on board with the plan. I think you guys deserve at least 4 hours of sleep tonight, and then get started tomorrow morning with figuring out the rest of the details. So no, but I also wanted to say congratulations to the Ridge seniors. I'm glad they got their graduation, however segmented it was, but I was lucky enough to go to one of them, and it was a little nerve-wracking walking in and seeing all the kids and their families and their masks, and I was like, wow, this is definitely one picture for the time capsule here. But once the ceremony got up and going and the kids started cheering for each other and stuff and shouting out names and nicknames and stuff like that, it felt normal and it felt good to be on Leaf Field. So I'm happy that they got that. So I'm glad that the district put it on for them and the kids showed up and enjoyed themselves.
Can I say something to Tim? I just wanted to echo, Mr. Markarian did it already, but when you mentioned 4 hours of sleep, it's the administrators here and the administrators not here, and countless teachers who have showed up to meeting after meeting after meeting, and I know they're going to keep doing that to keep working out all of those details, are the reason we have a plan. So I really appreciate the teachers who are just willing to spend time with me in Zoom, and all of these administrators in Zoom that you love so much, Tim, several times a week. So we really appreciate it.
I'm past my Zoom limit now, Kristen, right?
You were way past.
Okay.
Other board members? I just want to echo the last two comments from the board members. We can't thank you enough for the hard work that you've put in, and we all know how much time you've been spending and how little sleep you're getting, and we see the timestamps on the emails that are ridiculous and indicative of some serious loss of sleep. But again, like those who've spoken before, I feel very supportive of what you've put together, and obviously the devil's in the details. The refinements and the specifics are yet to come, but if you don't draw that line in the sand and say this is where we're going to work, then we can never get to those details. So I think this is a huge accomplishment in and of itself, and we look forward to hearing what you have to share with us as it develops. And by the way, as the only parent of a senior on this Zoom at the moment, I can't thank you enough for putting together what you did for our students. They obviously wished they could have had what everybody else gets, but it was still beautiful and well done, and they felt special, and they felt acknowledged. And honestly, it was really nice. And hey, by the way, 45 minutes is pretty awesome. Just saying. Anybody else? All right, well, I guess seeing no further,
Karen Richmond has her hand up.
Ms. Richmond.
All I was just going to say was, in order to be successful, it's pretty clear that we all have to be very flexible, and that includes everyone: parents, students, teachers, administrators, Board of Ed. You guys have had to pivot every day for 4 months, and I wanted to just also express my support and thank you for all that you guys have done so far and continue to do every day.
Anyone else? Mr. Markarian.
We appreciate your support, and I just wanted to say that we're bringing students hopefully to class in some very small scale next week on Monday. And there's a woman 2 squares to my left or right, I can't tell, who has been in the sleep deprived mode, really trying to make that happen. She has just done an incredible job, and we really hope on Monday we see a handful of kids at least coming to some classes. And so going first, if you will, in trying to bring some students back to school. We've talked a lot about September tonight and trying to bring some students back to school, actually inside of a classroom. And Jean has been her team has been doing everything possible with all the building admins and the facilities team and the business administrator, making arrangements to try mightily to get some students into some classrooms. And so I just kind of wanted to point out that before September, we still have the rest of July and August, and we're trying to get a couple weeks in with these students, and it's just a Herculean effort for 8 days of school, Gene, and I know it's worth it if we can make it happen. So thank you for all that you've put into trying to make that happen. And hopefully we see some kids on Monday.
Yes, hopefully it all goes well. Thank you. And all the administrators, the team everyone has been great. I mean, the building principals could not have done it without them. It's truly a team effort. Supervisors, everyone. It's really been fabulous.
Well, while we're saying thank yous, since we imposed upon someone to be here with us tonight, I want to say thank you to Mrs. Zarabera. When her role changed this past year, she could not possibly have imagined that she would be doing what she's been doing for us and with us over the past 5 months. And we're very grateful to have her and her role and for her time this evening. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Rita.
All right, if no one has anything else, I think we're up to adjournment. Mrs. Korn and Ms. Schaefer, all in favor? Any opposed? None are opposed, Rod. Shocking, I know. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Have a good night.